I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, first thing we're going to do is to approve the agenda. First thing I'd like to note is we're going to table item number 3 and table item number 9 on today's agenda. So if anyone has any other questions or items regarding the agenda?
Hold on. Can we add the 3 items that we put in front of you to add on at the tail end of the agenda? There should be a packet, I'm sorry, Mayor.
Yeah.
There are 3 items there. One has to deal with your statement and determination as prepared by the city attorney. Then the formal mayoral declaration 2020-1, and then a third one, a resolution enacted pursuant to Minnesota statutes 12.29, extending the period of a mayor declared local emergency. These items are being recommended by the city attorney's office. Emergency Preparedness Director Jim Garais will also be talking about these actions in conjunction with what we're being recommended to put into place after consultation yet late this afternoon with the city attorney's office. So we'd like to add these on at the end of the agenda.
So we put it at 9A, is that fine?
That works.
For tabling. The first one, the people who are going to present on table number 3 are not coming.
Requested that they not be here.
Requested not be, and then 9, we just felt that we have enough things on our docket that it wasn't a couple more importance, on this rental thing. It'll proceed forward as we so, those are 2 meetings. Okay, so then we'll add it in. Anything else, Mike, besides the, basically the state of emergency? Or accept the change. Okay. So with that change, I guess I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
So moved.
Are you going to second?
Second.
Oh, sorry.
Second by Rick Seiler. So if there's no other comments, we will vote to approve the amendment as changed. So all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Okay, passes 5-0. First thing on the agenda is the public hearing. Mike, you want to introduce this, and then we can do the public hearing and regarding 3-2 sales?
Sure, thank you, Mayor. Included in your packet this evening is a new application for a 3.2% off-sale malt liquor license from Colburn's Incorporated, doing business as Colburn's number store 2038 at 200 Alton Avenue Southeast here in New Prague. They're proposing that this liquor license would begin operating at this address upon approval and receipt of a license from the state of Minnesota, which would be approximately April 1 if everything is timely received. Under our city code and in accordance with all new liquor licenses, that before this license can be initially issued for the first time, that the council shall provide for an opportunity for public comment for or against the license. Everything has been paid in full by the applicant. The insurance is in place. There are no outstanding property tax or utility bills, so everything is in order to move forward with the issuance of a license, subject to any public comment and the council's vote. We have with us tonight Tara Deering. Tara is the liquor store manager for Colburn's here in New Prague, and she's available to answer any questions in case there are any from the council.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions from the council before I open the floor? Okay, I guess I'll open the floor for public comment on the issuance of a 3-2 off-sale liquor license for Postponed Inc. If you want to make a comment, please come to the podium, state your name and address.
Seeing none.
Okay, anyone? Okay, if not, I guess I'll look for a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
I got a motion by Rick Seiler, second by Sean Ryan to close the public hearing. There's no other comments. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Okay, the public hearing is closed. Now we have to address the approval of the license. Does anyone have any questions for Mike or for the manager of Coburn Liquor? Okay, if not, I guess I'll make a motion to approve the license.
Second.
Second by Maggie Bass. There's no other comments. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Okay, passes 5-0. Congratulations. Okay. Next, we got Chris, who's going to kind of shed a little light on our Main Street project.
Yeah, Mayor, members of the City Council, obviously we're here to give you an update on the Main Street Truck Highway 19 project. Certainly a lot has happened in the last 2 weeks, and we're not talking about the stuff that happened last week. Just to give you an update, obviously we've talked to Mike, we've gotten updates, but for the benefit of obviously the public and a reminder for everybody. If you recall last council meeting, I did mention I had a little bit of apprehension of what was happening out there because of some recent bids that had come in and what was happening with the climate out there. And by the next day, Tuesday, starting to get a little worried because I usually start getting a lot of calls, especially in that last week before the bid opening, and I didn't get any on Monday, or one or so on Monday, and then on Tuesday nothing. And then I did talk with folks from MnDOT who had heard from the grapevine that subcontractors had mentioned that there were no general contractors, or maybe only one general contractor that was on the fence looking at the project. We do know from some of the bids that were received kind of similar spec projects. City of Hutchinson had opened bids on the 27th of February, or I'm sorry, 28th of February. They had 2 bidders. Low bid was about 20% over the engineer's estimate. City of Seward opened bids on the 28th, Friday before we were scheduled to open, and they were about 12% over, about 1.6 million over their estimate. And so was starting to get concerns. I reached out, checked in with the prime bidders that were holding plans to find out kind of what the situation was. And at that point, a lot of them were saying that they were choosing to pass on it. There was just a lot of work out there. They had a lot of backlog from past projects from last year because of a lot of the wet weather. It definitely is it was an ambitious project, as the comments I had, and we did know that, but felt that it was reasonable at the time. And did get a lot of comments from folks about, things like, concrete seems to was being a challenge, and a lot of the subcontractors, if they weren't contractors who did their own concrete work, they were having challenges there, getting the subs to commit and time and stuff like that. And then finally, there was a disadvantaged business enterprise goal that we can't get around because of the federal funding on the project. We did put a request in to MnDOT here recently, the state aid, to see if there was a possibility to have that reviewed and revised, and that wasn't going to happen. So with all those things in play, we were really concerned that we were going to come to the bid opening and at best have maybe one bidder. This was what it was looking like. So we got together conference calls to evaluate what was in the best interest of the city and MnDOT, and it was to basically reschedule, postpone the bid opening. That would gain us more time, save some expense than actually going there, opening bids, going through the approval process to re-advertise, advertise, and bid open bids again. We would gain time. Plus, we got all the plan holders that are out there. We just need to basically submit an addendum and then re-look at schedule. So obviously, part of the discussion that we had internally, as well as with getting feedback from contractors, was relook at this project as a 2-year project and trying to find some positive out of that, and trying to look at how it could be phased. Not only, obviously, the biggest concern we have is that we're going to detour traffic for 2 seasons, 2 construction seasons. But with that, can we look at this in a way that maybe reduces the impact on the community and on the businesses and things like that? So, you know, and I'm sure one of the questions you have, and I would have if I were in your seat, was, well, why didn't we look at this as a 2-year project going into this? And we actually had met with a contractor 2 years ago when we were planning this early on. And they had preliminary plans during the feasibility phase. And our number one question for them, and it was a respectable contractor. In fact, it's one that's holding plans now, and it's probably one that's interested in looking at the project as we rebid it. But our number one question for them is this reasonable to be a 1-year project? And the answer at the time was yes. They asked some questions about running 2 crews and things like that, but you know, really gave us some things to think about. And so we were always working on that idea, and that was how we were planning the project. And obviously that was then, and this is now. There's a lot of things that have changed. Just it happens that it's the variables of how many projects are out there, what's the issues with subcontractors, material costs, you name it, ability to find workers. You know, I don't know. There's a lot of variables out there. So at this point, there was the right answer was to revisit this project and look at it as a 2-year project, and how can we phase this in a way that's will improve prices, improve the interest in the number of bidders, as well as try to reduce some of the impact that would be occurring, obviously, for the downtown and the business district. So I'm going to point out to the map that's up on the screen. You've got copies at your desk as well, and this actually got tweaked again here just this afternoon after some additional discussion internally between city staff, MnDOT staff. And I do want to point out, I do got Glenn Kudron's right here. Glenn Kudron from District 7 MnDOT's here as well, so I can offer some insight from the district's perspective. So one thing we were looking at is, and so we noted these areas on areas by number as also by color code. When we looked at this, talked about this on, kind of nailed it down on Friday, was to look at this area 1, which would be from Trunk Highway 21 up to 2nd Avenue Northwest, which would be right there to Wells Fargo. It's kind of the nastiest area of the project. It's got the railroad crossings, 5 of them have to be done. There's some poor soils in the area. There's just a lot of some challenges in dealing with the utilities, etc. But the nice thing is, with Miller Milling out of the picture and some other things that we're working on, there's not a lot of people to be inconvenienced, and those that are there have access from rear place, alleys, side streets, whatever that might be. So the idea was to get Area 1 would be required to be completed in the 2020 construction season. We would skip over the areas in orange. We're calling them areas 3 and 4. So from 2nd Avenue Northwest up through Lincoln Avenue by the library. This would be what we call the core downtown area that would be saved for 2021. It wouldn't be touched in 2020. And then Area 2 is the area to the east. Now this was always the area that we talked about that could be done separately. It's not independent of the rest of the project because it's because of where the stormwater flows, the sanitary water flows. You're starting at the downstream end, and that's Lincoln Avenue. So the area of Lincoln Avenue to the east could easily be done this season. And as of last week, it was our intent that would be again, a full requirement to be done in 2020. You start adding all the variables of some of the doubt that we're having with some of the recent events, and in our discussion, we felt we probably would be in everybody's best interest to provide the contractor a little more flexibility And so that's why you'll see in that area 2, it says 2020 or 2020 and or 2021. With the idea, it would be written in the contract that they could elect to do it this season. Whatever they open up this season, they close up this season. They could do it all, they could do half, whatever that be. Most contractors, if they open it up, they're probably going to want to finish it. So there'd be some that might, again, it's all going to depend on variable, different contractors, their workload, their availability of crews, and what they want to start when. But realistically, I'd say most contractors would probably want to tackle Area 2 this season and get it out of the way. But that said, again, it may not turn out that way depending on the contractor. So at this point, what we are suggesting and recommending is Area 2 would be a contractor discretion. Again, whether they started the work in 2020 or held it until 2021 would be contractor dependent. We feel that's going to provide the most flexibility, your best prices, your most contractors will look at the bid. So under kind of a worst case scenario for 2020 is Area 1 would be done, and then Area 5, which is the mill and overlay area between 21 and I think it's 5th Avenue. Best case scenario, Area 1, Area 2, and Area 5 would be substantially complete this season, which I feel would provide better access and mobility to the core area in 2021 when that's under construction. Some of the other advantages that postponing areas 3 and 4 do, as well as we have a lot of the kind of some challenging effort with the water and sewer services that have to be dealt with. Well, really the water services. So there's situations where plumbers are going to have to get into buildings so we can bring those water services into the buildings. And the reality is, if the contractor takes advantage of that winter time, they could actually get some of the prep work done ahead of time where actually pipes are popped out from foundations and ready to be hooked up to when construction occurs in 21.
When is those thinking?
Yep.
You've got October, so is that going to be?
Well, and this wasn't necessarily intentional, but it kind of worked out that way, so we made sure it kind of worked that way. So where the downtown festival occurs, obviously this isn't, the parade down Main Street is probably not an option, and it was never an option in 2020. But the downtown area that's used for the festival is that Area 3. That Area 3 won't be touched in 2020, therefore is available for Doshinki this fall. And then we're suggesting a requirement of end of August, and actually I think we have some wiggle room where we could actually squeeze that to the first, one more week in September, but basically Area 3 would have an interim substantial completion with enough time to wrap things up and be ready for, again, using that stretch of the road for Doshinki in 2021. Again, if they start on that west end of Area 3 early in 2021, there's 3 blocks. They got a lot of time to get a lot done.
So we're going to change the date that the bids are going to open then, so they're just now opening again. So that's going to start putting us back for the summer work. You know, see what I'm saying? I'm worried. I don't know if they'll finish by October.
Well,
more or less September something for Doshinki.
Well, again, the Area 1 could be Area 1 is to be substantially completed by October of this year, after Doshinki. But Area 1, it doesn't affect Doshinki. It doesn't have to be used for it. Same thing with Area 2. If they happen to be working in it, they don't have to be done with it. They can be under construction. It doesn't affect Doshinki in 2020.
So you'd still have Area 4, 3, and Area 1.
So
They could go. They don't go up to Area 1. They take a right there at the end of Area 3, and then use that back lot to park it. Correct?
Yeah, there would be obviously all the side streets. Access from the side streets would be available to the area. So again, we'll point this out again. So under the 2020 scenario, Area 3 and Area 4 won't be touched. Access from the side streets would be there. cross traffic's there, people can go up and down within that area 3 and 4, they can park in the building, in front of properties. They can park along the whole area within about 100 feet of where the barricades would be at the ends of the construction. Again, that's assuming both areas 1 and 2 are under construction in 2020. In 2021, again, Area 3 should be substantially complete. Area 4 probably getting pretty far along, but again, Area 4 is not needed for Dojinki. Area 3 would be needed for Dojinki, and again, should be substantially complete. It's reasonable to say that much work should be done.
And they'll close all that up over the winter. They're gonna
Correct.
leave anything
Anything that they open up in Area 1 and 2 has to be done before the end of the season. There may be some stretches that have temporary blacktop from old new concrete to old pavement, but the road will be open to traffic, and the detours go away during the off-season, during the winter suspension.
And we wouldn't change any of the detouring map that we got set, right?
No, when we have access routes, so again, what you're not seeing is we have the detour that detours the main traffic around the community, around the project, but then we have all the access routes into the core of downtown. And again, in 2020 with 3 and 4 open, I mean, there should be a lot of fairly easy access. In 2021, if they do both areas 1 and 2, again, it brings the access closer to the actual core construction. So it'll make accessibility even a little better and a little easier than maybe if it was a full west to east type construction.
It's not gonna change the price.
This should improve whatever, if we'd have bid it the way we had it planned, given now the time, the climate, the bidding situation out there now, this price will be more competitive, more bidders, and the price will be lower. Again, I'm hearing interest. I've even seen an additional plan holder, a prime bidder that's got plans that didn't have them before. So I'm expecting we'll have more people looking at it. Given all the variables lately, I don't want to speculate anything, but it's a better situation given where we're at right now.
Hey, Mike, regarding the temporary easements that we got, do they hold through a second construction year?
They did, we got them for 2 years to begin with.
Okay.
Not necessarily knowing that this was going to occur, but anticipating that.
You were sitting there smiling, you knew you were gonna answer that question.
But you pay us to anticipate those things. It would have been, if it had been all done in 21, it still likely would have been carryover items that needed to go on in 21 anyway. So it wasn't for the fact that it was a 2-year phase project, just any of the ancillary carryover from 20 into 21. So
Will that stuff then carry into 22?
I don't know, I have to go back and take a look at that with the attorneys and see.
Yeah, and part of the reason to do the 2-year temporaries is if there's some warranty item or whatever. If there's a warranty item, the property owner's going to say, yeah, that's fine, please take care of that. So that, I guess I'm not speculating issues there, and there's certainly something we can work with MnDOT right away on if we do need to address it.
So, because your easements are based on a 2000, end of 2001, right? At the beginning of 2000, or at the beginning of 2022, your easements are expired, correct?
I believe so.
Yeah, I think it was probably November, could have been in November 21. Was probably the end date, kind of end of construction, or winter suspension would be my guess. Yeah, pretty typical. So I guess any questions on, what has been shown or proposed here? Basically, we've got a draft addendum put together that we've been working with staff and MnDOT on to make sure we're all on the same page, but this is really the gist of what's been proposed.
I do see the storm sewer. That is, you see a June 15th date. Is that something that we would definitely push?
Yeah, well, and when I wrote that out, it was before we had talked about doing this as a 20 and/or 21. So they would need to go in there and do that first if they are going to address this in 2020. If they say, I ain't gonna touch it till 2021, they could do it in the late fall after the park's been used. And again, we'll get that finalized in the addendum. Or they could come back in the spring of 21 and do it. But they have to do that first before they can really do any more work on 20.
Well, it's just right now, the temporary or estimated date to do the Veterans Memorial is September of 2020. So that's why, if that's going to be a variable, we need to let the Legion know.
I met with them today, and we went through this conversation, and they've got some delivery issues that they're dealing with, and yes, their goal is this fall, but they would certainly work together to accommodate that.
Okay.
The intent is we either have to do it before the activities or after the activities in the park to make sure we don't have any problems with the federal.
It's part of the federal, it was part of the environmental impact is what it was. Yeah. If you remember, that document came before you probably almost 2 years ago, a year and a half ago. So part of the other thing that we are doing, and you've seen part of it, is that we are trying to provide some public outreach. Of course, that's just gotten a little more challenging here in the last few days. We did have a news release that went out there last week, and luckily got it in the paper. We'll have another one that's ready to go here as well, based on what's been discussed here. We do have a letter ready to go out to send to the adjacent property owners, with the intent of having a business meeting with the businesses and property owners on the 24th of the month. At this point, we're going to get creative, and we may be looking at doing some type of webinar type meeting where people can call in, video it, and then if they don't have an opportunity to call in or maybe they can have an opportunity to view it online. So we just at least get the message out. Obviously, people will have the letter. They can contact me and call me if they've got questions. The other thing that we had intended to do, and we'll still find some creative way to do it, is to look at after we bid it, have the contractor online, we know what the schedule is to do an open house. Typically, we would have an open house. The community can come, contractors there as well, and we can meet with folks and kind of go over what the project is. But that's kind of all on hold. We're going to be creative on how we do that. So.
Well, in that regard, is that it's in regards to dealing with the coronavirus items that MnDOT directives have indicated that their staff can't participate in any large-scale community open houses or public meetings, as well as are taking a look at trying to do that. That probably runs contrary to trying to hold meetings of that nature, especially with the latest word down that they really don't want meetings with more than 10 or less people involved in doing those kind of things.
Is something like this acceptable even? I mean, we're supposed to have 10 or less people.
That's just coming down today, and so trying to react as quick as we could. You'll see in the later discussion tonight is how we can avoid doing some of these kind of things to minimize some of the exposure. So yeah, there's nothing that we're necessarily violating. That word has just come out today, and so there wasn't abilities to react and to change or to get rid of this late in the game. But it's exactly what they're recommending, is trying to avoid exposures of having this many people congregated together in a room. So yes, that would be the intent going forward. And so what Chris is trying to describe is, are there other ways that we can communicate with city residents, business owners, property owners initially, and how can we best get that done in lieu of having just a public informational meeting?
Mike, are you looking for this concurrence to be in the form of a motion?
It certainly wouldn't hurt.
I make a motion to concur with the presentation and direct staff and city engineer to proceed as proposed phasing and schedule changes.
I'll second.
Okay. Any other comments right now?
I guess I just have a quick question for Chris before the motion is voted on. How sure are you that we're going to get bids on April 2nd?
Well, I feel a lot better about it than maybe I did on Tuesday or Tuesday after the last council meeting. I felt pretty good about it last week, and then you had the recent stuff with the COVID-19. I don't know how that's going to affect contractors.
Okay.
They may look at this and go, we don't know what's going to happen next year. Let's get projects that we know are going to be 2-year projects. They might see that as a positive, but they may also go, geez, I don't know if I'm going to lose half my crews or something too. This at least gives them the flexibility because they can adapt. If something changes with them or the crews, they have the ability to adapt. Is the way I see it.
So then if, let's say, we were not to get bids on the 2nd, what would the next step be? Postpone the entire thing until 2021 again?
Well,
Or would it be a 2-year project at that time? Now we're talking 21 and 22?
so Sean, this is actually a very good question. We've obviously played this in our mind. What would we do? What would happen if either we don't get bids, the bids are unacceptable, we don't get enough bids, they're really high? We would have to definitely look at schedule again, or maybe some of the design, because like concrete is what we're seeing as the main variable. It's the prices, where the prices are high. At this point, we have nothing to lose but to go ahead and do the bid opening and see what we get. If we had to revamp this and revisit it, rebid it, we would probably look at bidding this as a project that would be a 2021 project, probably a 1-year project again, with the contractor's option to do a little bit of work in 2020 if they wanted. Like maybe Area 1, maybe Area 5, or both of those. That's kind of in the back of my mind, that's how we would look at it.
Would that push the date back from April 2nd again? Because what I'm getting at is we're starting construction or season, so
yes,
if we had
it would probably turn these items into a like late summer type, into fall type construction again. At most, a contractor might do is work in Area 1 and Area 5, and that would be it. And it would be late summer, fall of 2020, and they'd save all the rest of 2021.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, I have a motion by Bruce Wolves, seconded by Maggie Bass to approve the staff recommendation of the changes for the street projects. There's no other comments? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposition? Okay, passes 5-0.
Thank you. The other item before you is pretty straightforward. This is limited use permit, basically a resolution approving the limited use permit and authorizing its execution. The limited use permit is basically the permit that MnDOT's permit to allow the city to have city amenities on MnDOT public right-of-way. So it'll be some of the aesthetic items like benches, the flagpoles hanging off the decorative lights, trash receptacles. I don't think we have any bike racks on it. Just those type items, plantings, landscaping, and basically leaving the responsibility for the maintenance of those items to the city. So that's what the agreement is. If the city follows through with things are maintained, they're not providing public safety issues or traffic safety issues, then it would be a process that can be renewed on a 10-year basis. That's that in a nutshell, I guess. Any questions for us or me or Glenn? Or
Any comments or questions for Chris? Glenn?
Are we giving up any rights in that in 10 years? I mean, who knows what maybe come down on. Yeah, you bet.
I don't know the word.
I guess to answer that question, I guess the limited use permit, all the items that are constructed in the cooperative construction project that the council approved at the last meeting, that's the mechanism how it gets paid for. constructed as part of the project, what the agreement is between the city and MnDOT, cost participation works. This permit itself that you'd be approving tonight is related to the actual application, like Chris said, putting those items in the right of way. Now, if for some reason that 10 years from now, that item is no longer permitted in the right of way, that's something that MnDOT would look at, say evaluate, or is it something that, instances where somebody's not maintaining that piece of decorative item, whatever it might be, that somebody has to come in and remove that type of thing. That's really what, it's another mechanism to make sure that it's kept up and within the constraints of what the right-of-way usage is for.
Right. Well, I'm not worried about us, the upkeep of it as much as there's been plenty of goofy stuff coming out of St. Paul that maybe might change the whole look of our Main Street, which is important to us, but, I mean, so what happens if we didn't agree to this 10-year term?
What's in there right now is based off of what's in that construction plan today.
Okay.
So those are the things that have already been approved by the city, whether that's certain plantings that are in the actual boulevard, some of the streetscaping features, the stone seat walls, some of that are there. If there's some reason that 10 years from now, whatever that might be, that they're no longer permitted in that right-of-way zone, and MnDOT retains that right from a jurisdictional standpoint across the whole state, hey, this needs to be addressed. I'm not seeing anything at that point right now that's in there. Obviously, MnDOT's approved the plan set. MnDOT staff's approved it. It's just the city recognizing that these are the permitted uses that you can have in the right-of-way. So it's not extending it and broad-basing it to some other use that you might want to do down the road.
And obviously, one of the big ones is the decorative light poles, where you've got the abilities to either put flag holder brackets on it, or the banner brackets, or the planter brackets. All of that is our responsibility to maintain within their right-of-way.
Right. And I'm not worried about that. What I'm worried about them is maybe perhaps having the ability to change the downtown look because of some other reason that they developed in St. Paul. Are we giving up our rights to control our Main Street the way we want to decorate it and put flags out or put
All of what we're talking about, those items,
Yeah.
are within the MnDOT right-of-way. That's not our right-of-way, that's MnDOT right-of-way.
Okay.
So they're giving us permission to install or place those items in that right-of-way, and provided we take care of them and they're still allowed to be there, they're permitting that to go on.
Okay.
So if...
So we're not really giving up, there's already a state statute that they have that right to limit right now if they wanted, but they approved what we have now.
This permit basically allows you to put in the right-of-way what is in the current plan set, yes, that's being bid today.
For a
It's
period
not-
of 10 years.
It's related exactly what there's an exhibit on the back side of the permit that itemizes the specific items that relate to the permit. That's attached, Mike, as part of the permit. They've got the plan set with it, they're highlighted in red revision clouds, you'll see exactly where
There's a black and white
specifically
that
apply.
we didn't do them all in color.
But, so we're not really giving up our
I don't know that you're
so-called rights.
No,
in
you're
10
actually,
years
we're
from
actually
now.
giving you,
Okay.
giving you the
That's
permission
what-
to
that
put
was
it
the
there.
question.
Yes. That's what this permit's for.
Are you aware of any case where the state has dropped it after 10 years? I guess the only thing in my mind is that we're paying for something, and really the risk is that it has to be pulled in 10 years when we're paying for something that's kind of useful life that's longer than 10 years. And I imagine there's a reason for 10 years that was picked.
I think it's just to make sure it gets revisited on a 10-year
Cycle.
basis, that doesn't go 30, 40 years from now, all of a sudden we're talking about something that, why is that there, who authorized that to be in the right of way, who owns that? It's really laying out ownership and responsibility for those type of items that are in the MnDOT right of way. Otherwise, 20 years from now, there's something that's there, or 10 years from now, that's, well, who's gonna maintain this, needs to be fixed. MnDOT retains the right, if the city's not gonna fix it, then we have ability to, hey, this needs to be removed as a safety issue.
Sure. Are you aware of any situation where that MnDOT's required a lot of removal or destruction of things? Or is it just a small?
Not specifically offhand, in a downtown situation like this, I'm not seeing anything specifically that you're doing that's way extreme, I guess. It's more typical streetscaping features that we see in other communities. So it's just more of a acknowledgement, as Mike said, that MnDOT's giving authorization, and these are the requirements that go with it as a city, if you allow those to go in.
The reinitiation of the permit is our responsibility. That 90 days prior to the expiration, 10 years from now, it's our responsibility to renew the permit request, and that at the time of the renewal, that they would review the facility and the area to ensure that it is compatible, as Glenn described, that it's a safe and efficient operation of the highway, and that the facility and the area are in good condition and repair, and that assuming things are in good condition and there's no issues, it looks like under the process it should be a renewable permit. So, but it does put the onus on us to renew it in 10 years.
Like, I mean, it gives requirements of what you can and can't. For banners, flag holders, you can't advertise, business advertising, that type of thing within MnDOT right away, but there's other uses you can use in there. But laying out some of the guidance on applicable use.
We're going to have Glenn put on his calendar, or he's going to have to come back in 10 years to help us renew this.
Yes.
Do we have to go into remove anything ourselves in that 10-year period, or do we need your state's approval to?
Anytime we do work within the public right of way, when we have to get permit approval authority, we do not.
Notify maintenance. Say it again.
If we want to do something,
Anything we want to do within MnDOT's right away, we have to get a permit, we got to get permission.
So even though we have a
That's been
permit,
like that for,
This permit does not allow us to do anything with removing, even when we have a permit.
This permit is, I guess, is strictly related to the streetscaping features of this
Right, I
construction
understand.
project.
Right, so if we have a 2-foot flower box made of brick and we're going to take it away, we would not be able to do that on our own.
I think that just had that interaction and dialogue with MnDOT. I mean, if you're gonna pull it out, what's gonna go back in its place? I guess that's the dialogue that, with the permit here, it prompts that discussion there.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Okay, I guess I'll make a motion to approve the limited use permit.
Second.
Second by Rick Sadler. There's no other comments or questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposition? Okay, passes 5-0. Thank you, gentlemen. Okay, item number 3 was tabled, so the next item on the agenda is the ambulance service agreement. I think we've all been through plenty of information, conversation.
The ambulance one.
What's that?
I thought you were tabling the ambulance one.
No, we're tabling the Central Plaza.
Okay.
That one, because they were not to be here to present.
Okay.
So we tabled item number 3.
I thought it said K here.
Oh. So we're at item number 4. I think we've have had a lot of input from our last meeting, from emails that we've received, from calls that we've received. So I think we need to move forward on this. I guess I'm looking for any comments from the council. I'm going to start off with my comments. I feel that we should renew the contract with North Memorial for at least a minimum of 3 years. And beyond that, we should go out for competitive bids with all ambulance services that may want it. Not only Mayo, but North, or Alina, or Northfield, whoever's serving the area. So that's just my take.
Can you make that motion on second?
No, just, I want comments. Anyone else have any comments?
I had similar thoughts. In entering into the contract for a 3-year period of time, I think that gives us ample time to take a look at possible other services. I'm sure that the medical scene is going to drastically change in those 3 years of time. There might be new technologies et cetera, et cetera. So I think 3 years is a good chunk of time, and then allows us to go out for competitive bid and hopefully do so with an education behind some of those decisions.
Okay?
I fully support the renewing the North Memorial contract. I've not received any public comment or to really change my attitude towards that. I do feel the city agreed to take responsibility for the license and not transfer it to the provider at the time we established a relationship with North Memorial. The city could have opted out of that at the time, but chose not to, so I think the city does have a responsibility towards the 911 service area, and having license, we need to do certain due diligence that we should be doing in monitoring, providing an acceptable service that's in the best interest of our service area. Secondly, I think it's in the best interest of the people that we do consider alternative providers that would be beneficial to the people if there are benefits. We've heard a lot of comments that have made statements that there would be some benefits to our service area if we looked at requests for proposals or something like that. So I think there's a benefit for that. Thirdly, I think it's in the best interest of the community that we do allow a bidding or request for proposal. Our city has had a history of allowing competitive bids and allowing local businesses to be involved or to be considered when there's a service they can provide or a product that meets the quality or their capability, capacity requirements of our city's needs. I think this is such an issue that we should consider a local business for that as well. I'm not saying there should be any preference for that, but like all businesses in Prague, we should at least give them the consideration for it. I think 3 years is acceptable. To me, I would suggest more closely to a 2-year time period. If we're not going to do any work until the end of 3 years to consider a competitive bid, I don't think that we're being sincere with our requirements of due diligence or really taking our responsibility as seriously as it probably should be when we've accepted the license for this service. My resolution would be more to approve an extension of the contract, but direct city staff to look into what kind of process should we be looking at to look at competitive bids over the next year and setting up a timeline or a process that we could work towards something over the next 2 years to entertain a request for proposal or competitive bids.
Okay, I got one. I worked harder on this than I have any other thing that's come in front of us. There's an overwhelming consensus in the city to renew North, redo North, but I was hung up between the 3-year or the 5-year. I think opening up for bid in 3 years is going to draw a lot of flies to it, so I don't know.
Well, I think
3 years is probably better, and then we're going to get a lot of bids. One thing that we do is every year we go over our vendors. We redo the lawyer, we redo the engineer, and we could do that on a yearly basis too. Is that kind of where you're thinking too then? Can't we just put in the motion that this should be reviewed in 2 years? And that would give us a whole year to review it.
Well, this is my thought, Rick, is that if we renew it for a 3-year term, in year 2, that would allow us to start exploring other services, maybe opening it up for a bid at that time. It's going to take time to ramp up a new ambulance service if that should happen. So we have to do more, I think, in that year 2, so that year 3 closes out and a new service would ramp up and the old service would ramp down if that should happen.
So we should start looking at this in a year from now? Should we put that in the
Well,
motion?
in year two, in year two.
Year two?
Yeah, I think we owe the North Memorial for at least a minimum of a 3-year contract. Whether we start looking at it in 2, it makes a lot of sense, but to leave something hanging that quickly, kind of do my line in the sand, a minimum of 3 years, and that's the way I'm.
I think another thing we need to be sensitive to is the amount of work that's going to be going on with the street project in 20 and 21. So,
Yeah, I did find one complaint about North. And I looked, I just couldn't find a complaint. So, I'm sitting going, well, why are we gonna fire, why get rid of something that's doing so well? So I would go with what the motion you made, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, any other comments? Okay, if not, I guess I'll make a motion to approve the renewal in North Ambulance for a term of 3 years.
Second.
I get a second by Rick Seiler. There's no other comments?
Just a clarification, so we're looking at the contract that was presented to us with the only change being 3 years from.
Correct. Any other comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Okay, passes 5-0. Next, I would also make a motion to make a concurrent motion that would consider the lease agreement also for 3 years, since the lease agreement will be with North Memorial
That's the fire department.
at the emergency service facility.
Right.
I'll second.
Got a second by Maggie Bass. Any other comments, questions? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Okay, passes. Thank you everyone for all the time and diligence and comments that have been made. We appreciate the feedback and we're looking forward for another contract with North. So
Thank you.
thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Okay.
Thank you.
Ken, I think you're taking the next item?
Okay, it's a word of what we just discussed. Mike, do you grasp what we discussed as far as starting
Yes.
a process, or do you want a motion to the effect talking about researching and looking at what a process might look at?
I think with what you've given us, that, and taking a look at it, we can maybe map that out and bring that back to you so you can kind of see what that looks like. Because the challenge in there, contrary to, when you take a look at some of the other things that we do annually as far as renewing the attorney's contract or the financial advisory fee or the auditing fee, those are professional services and those are not required to be bid every single year. When you take a look at this ambulance contract, those ambulances sitting out there are several $100,000 a piece. And then you've got all of the equipment that goes inside of that are also thousands of dollars in that process. Then you also have the staffing that goes with that. So that's not something that you put on the calendar and assume you're going to change every single year at a whim. And so when you look at that, there's a lot from a timing that, as you were describing, that has to be done. Looking at any conversion that if you want that next process to be done and in place and ready to go, then we probably need to start probably at the end of year one, if not sooner, taking a look at what is it you're looking at for what you're wanting to see in the delivery of that, assuming we can identify that sufficiently, because when you then go out and go through that process and take proposals, and depending upon how many are received, then trying to evaluate that and to then be able to avoid that, so that whatever entity that is, assuming that somebody different is different, they have to have the lead time to place the time to be able to get those ambulances and get that equipment on board and to get the staffing and get up and running. And so they're going to need a good lead time, probably a good year in advance or more before they would take over the service, so that that stuff is going to be ready to go. So
I think that's what you were going for when you did the second year.
Right.
I just want to be clear that we're, and so I don't misunderstand, that we're talking about city staff coming back to city council in a year or so with a review of what a process might look like and timeline and what it might involve.
And I guess I won't wait that long, Bruce, is that I would try to put that together so that I've got your concurrence after tonight's decision, that we take a look at that so that we can map something out, put a calendar with it to know that that's able to be done and put in place with the proper lead time.
And I guess I just want to put a bug in your ear, but I've learned a lot in this process of the things I don't know, and I think part of your deliberation, your consideration may be similar to when we look at a financial consultant or an attorney. Is there an outside source that we should consider helping us with the proposal process or even making a recommendation then? And I don't know who that might be, if we consult with the hospital association or the license board of the state of Minnesota for ideas or thoughts as far as what a resource might be. Help us.
And that would be part of our job would be to reach out and try to find out where that has occurred, as well as it may be worth putting together with council's input, some type of community group or task force or whatnot, taking a look at ambulance medical services, and that is that what is it that we're looking for to be different or continued, or what do we want to see in that, so that that message can be conveyed as part of that RFP process.
Yeah, I think we're on the same page. I just, as an example, there are many things that were brought up about protocols and things. I'm not an expert to be able to make a decision on what this person said versus that person, but people were explaining that there's differences of this and that. And that's where it might be helpful to the city council if we had someone help us. Is that really a difference, or what is the difference, and be able to explain some of those issues. Because if people do want to make a bid, we have to have a process that looks at it fairly.
And it's not like buying an automobile or a truck or a piece of equipment in that process, that you're buying a relationship with a service to deliver a service to the community and the neighboring area. And what should that service look like? What should it have involved with it? And then what is it that they'll be providing for equipment and manpower and all of those kinds of things? And that's what I'm saying, is that there may need to be some group that's able to be put together by the council that's able to look at that in more detail and provide feedback to the council before we go out. I can't say that I can draw upon, at least from my personal experiences, or go to somebody that has recently done this, that we're going to have to do some looking into that to see where that has recently existed and what was the quality of the product that they used for their RFP solicitation, or how did they necessarily go through that. And I don't profess to know that sitting here tonight.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Okay, Kent? Item number 5.
So we have a rezoning of the two properties in the light industrial, or rezoning to light industrial on the chart property. This is the second reading of this ordinance amendment. Basically, it's Outlot A, excuse me, and a portion of Outlot B. As indicated on the overhead, just the areas north of the creek from the medium density residential, which is the blue color here, to have that be part of the I-1 light industrial, as was introduced at the last meeting. Administrator Johnson providing the background on the conditions permit and the introduction of the rezoning ordinance. They do plan to have tank and some semi-trailer storage on this area, properly screen it, and in order to effectuate that, this zoning amendment needs to occur for the rezoning. Staff does still concur on the recommendation to approve and adopt the ordinance tonight, which would be published after tonight's meeting and then become effective as indicated on the ordinance of March 26th of 2020.
Okay, any questions?
I'll make the motion to adopt the planning commission's recommendation.
The second reading?
Yes.
Okay, I got a motion to approve the second reading of the zoning ordinance change.
Second.
Okay, I got a second by Sean Ryan. This requires a roll call.
Yes, we need 4 out of,
Yep.
so I have to vote in the
First,
affirmative.
before we go to a roll call, does anyone have any questions or comments? If not, I will start with the roll call. Councilmember Bass?
Aye.
Councilmember Ryan? Aye. Councilmember Seiler?
Aye.
Councilmember Wolf?
Aye.
Mayor Nicolai? Aye. So it passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Now, next we have, looks like a high-density resident, or
I got
high-density.
a zoning ordinance amendment here coming to you from Planning Commission. I'll just run through a quick PowerPoint for council's benefit here. So we had initially discussion at the January 22nd Planning Commission meeting. We had a plat for Deutschland addition, which was south of the Walgreens building. The applicant, Mark Deutsch, at that time indicated some intent to build an apartment building on that lot south of the Walgreens building regarding densities in the RH high density residential zoning district. So at that meeting kind of led to discussions about what we allowed for densities in the RH district, which is currently 22 units per acre, and how specifically that could relate to that site, but then other properties in general, and how the RH property is developed in New Prague. It was noted at that meeting that our RH density has really seen the majority of the development be type of townhomes like you see in Horizon Drive, the area directly south of highway near Holy Trinity Church, in that area, which are roughly up to 12 unit buildings, 8 to 12 unit buildings, nothing more than 2 stories in height, and getting close to that 22 units an acre. So the discussion was, did we truly have a district that could provide for more of a prototypical apartment building? And Planning Commission asked staff to look into more amendments to the zoning ordinance in the RH district specifically at that time. During the month of February, staff did check with area cities, and not only did we find that our densities were low, that we found that majority of the cities in the area did have building aesthetic requirements for buildings of more than 5 units. Kind of that fourplex and lower cutoff is, more of the typical dividing line between your regular construction methods and larger buildings. So we also talked at the Planning Commission meeting about aesthetic requirements once you get over that 5 unit threshold. Planning Commission did hold a public hearing at their February 26th meeting on the proposed amendments. We'll go over those in a minute here. Ultimately, their recommendation was a 4-0 vote to forward to you tonight for consideration of introduction of the ordinance amendments. In a nutshell, what we talked about with the Planning Commission and what ended up being recommended was, again, increasing our high-density residential district from 22 units per acre to 32 units per acre. A number of the cities in Scott County and the surrounding area had varied units that were allowed from, I think Shakopee was high at 36 units per acre, and then some other cities, including Elko New Market, had proposed changes to go up to 30. Prior Lake was going to have it proposed up to 29.9. Jordan is already at 33 units per acre, just to name a few. Most of the other cities also do allow, with a planned unit development, the ability to up those per acre numbers without having it in their ordinance. We don't currently have that provision in our planned unit development ordinance, and quite frankly, I'd rather look at something a little more encompassing with the ordinance amendment that we have here tonight, rather than the PUD. You end up with any number of different factors that could go into that. So we are recommending 32 units per acre. Just for example, on that lot south of Walgreens, it would allow about 40 units on that site, just for a reference point, which is about a 3-story building. Certainly not exceeding our building height requirement. Other things that go into play with the RH density district, in order to even reach that density, we have a per unit, per lot density requirement today of 2,000 square feet of lot area per unit. Now, trying to extrapolate that out onto a couple of different sites in town, we found again that was not feasible to reach the density that we would have today. So a reduction to about 1,300 units per, 1,300 square feet per unit would get you more in line with that 32 unit an acre density. Then another one we have is an open space requirement per unit, and that is to provide for kind of a recreational area for people if they want to have a picnic or bring a grill out in the lawn. Maybe there's kids and they need to go outside and run around. Our ordinance provides for a minimum area of open space per unit. This came out of, again, the DR Horton development initially, that you get too many units in the area, there's not enough place for people to get together and have recreation. Not necessarily a public park, but almost like their own recreational space for lack of not having a backyard or other recreational area. That was also looked at again. It was noted that it'd be very difficult if we kept that 100 square feet per unit to decrease that to 300 square feet per unit in order to allow you to get to that density that we're proposing. And again, we're not talking massive densities here at all. We're talking about your typical apartment buildings, about 3 stories tall. And then the other thing we talked about was design requirements. Some cities really do have pages upon pages of requirements for aesthetic appearances. We looked at a modified version of our B2 zoning ordinance requirements, which require brick, other high quality materials, breaking up roof designs so you don't have long stretches of buildings without any architectural features. So really mirroring that from our B2 district, and that was used generally speaking on the Prague Village building as well. That's kind of why we are proposing that here for other larger residential buildings. I think Prague Village turned out well using our B2 requirements, so it seemed like a good method to move that aesthetic requirement forward. So that is what was proposed in the amendment as well. Here's the actual language. Really overall not a lot of changes. You can see the 22 to 32 units. We had a limit. I don't know why they mentioned buildings having 9 or more units. That was actually there was never a true minimum there. So we just got rid of, I don't care how many units are in the buildings, but you just have your density requirement. Minimum lot area, like I said, reducing and use the open area down a little bit so you can actually reach that density. And then these are the design requirements, and again, these mirror very, very similarly to what we have in our B2 zoning ordinance requirements for commercial building construction. And again, that's to provide that minimum standard of building improvements. So we're going to have some very plain, large building with residential type grade siding and very few architectural features. So this would prevent that from occurring. I do want to note that one thing I did point out here, we did have some discussion about building height, and if we could go over 50 feet. One of our planning commissioners, Paul Tupy, is on the fire department. We had actually talked to Chief Tukulski as well. So the ladder truck for the fire department actually does have a 75-foot reach, but that depends how high you can really go, how close you can get to the buildings and different variables. And Commissioner Tupy's requirements on the fire chiefs was that 50 foot's a good number. It's the number we have today. It's actually a limit on all of our industrial and commercial districts as well. So why would we exceed that? Noting that we have exceeded that for charts for a variance for their building, but that was knowing that we had reviewed those buildings through conditions permit processes where we had fire access lanes and we knew we could get a truck near the building and get to those peaks of the roof. We don't necessarily have that case in all of our residential areas, so we felt that if a building needed a variance in the future, they could apply for one, but just keep the height limit at 50 feet. And again, that's nothing that is any different than we have today. So ultimately, Planning Commission and staff would look for your recommendation to introduce the ordinance tonight, but at minimum have discussion on the amendments that are in front of you tonight.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions or comments?
I have some. Ken, can you shed some light on kind of the history of why that was initially set up at 22?
You know, I don't really know the history of that. Looking back in the zoning ordinance, going back to the year 2000, when kind of the modern version of the zoning ordinance went into place, it was set at 22 at that time. Now, looking back in older ordinances, number was also similar to that, going back to, I believe, our 1986 ordinance. I don't know where that number came from. I think it was probably due to some other developments that had occurred, like Westgate Townhomes, for example. The Halter Crest Apartments or Parkside Apartments over on 6th Avenue were kind of around that time frame as well, late 70s, early 80s. I don't know any more than that, to be honest with you, other than it has really been a limiting factor, and I think to a degree why we haven't seen, you know, true apartment construction for,
Right.
you know, 30 plus years. And I know we're getting more interest in that, but again, we're not a shock, we're not a Prior Lakes. I don't think we need those densities, but they approach those through the planning and development process, and you know, they can get upwards of 100 plus units per acre. I don't think we would want to go that route.
No, I wouldn't. I mean, I like the fact that we're putting some aesthetics in there and whatnot, but I guess, you know, I was trying to get at why we came up with 32 as opposed to, you know, Savage is at 20, Belle Plains at 22, we were at 22. You know, some of the other ones, Jordan's up to 33, but I guess my fear is that what I'd hate to see is and I'm not saying Mark's going to do this, I saw his plans, they look fantastic, you know, but I'd hate to see an apartment building that has, you know, these units that are all efficiency units, and not a range in them or something, and they're more like a hotel room as opposed to an actual decent sized living space, you know. And I wonder if this doesn't limit us. So my next question, piggybacking off that, is I see some other cities do allow changes within the PUD, except we do not.
We do not.
Why is that?
Because I think we do not want to open it up, throw the book out the window, and have those 100 unit per acre proposals come before you. And you're kind of limited to a degree in saying, okay, what do we have to compare that to further development in the city?
So that would
don't
restrict the council from saying no, that wouldn't be the right spot.
Yeah, I think that would
Where this
be
would tighten
much
it
more
up.
limited, yeah.
Okay.
You kind of throw the zoning book out to a degree, and I think this would help limit those from coming in front of you. Or I would say, why, you know, what reason do we have to say no? And I think this helps that.
Okay, well, and that's good.
And I do want to point out, Sean, we do have the minimum square foot per unit. You know, we do list that of efficiency, and it has to be 400 square feet on up to 3-bedroom unit minimums. I guess I have not seen in other ordinances, not that we necessarily couldn't, and I'd have to talk more with the attorney about this, but if, like you said, you don't want to see a 100% efficiency unit building or something.
Right, right.
I guess I'd have to look into that a little further to see if, are we able to, I know there's fair housing laws and other things that you get into for that. But we at least do have the minimum per square footage per unit in our code already. I just wouldn't know about a limit on that. I'd have to do a little more checking.
I'm sorry, what was the minimum?
It's on page 3
Of 10?
of 10, and the efficiency units are 400 square foot minimum,
Right.
1 bedroom, 600 square foot on up. And the other thing I wanted to point out too is we do require, regardless of the unit type, 2 parking spaces per unit. That can also helps limit how small the site you can get as well.
Right.
Because you have to have obviously 2 spaces per unit, and I think that helps limit the number of units you can cram in a property.
So did we have some cities respond back to this, to your questions on their minimum square footage? Is that something we should take a look at and maybe change it so it isn't so small?
We did not. We certainly could do that.
So theoretically, an efficiency unit with 400 square feet would be required to have 2 parking stalls.
Yes.
Right? So theoretically, you would have 2 people that could potentially be living within 400 square feet,
You potentially could.
which is 400 square feet really isn't that's smaller than a most hotel rooms, is it not? Even the small ones are 800 square feet, aren't they? Again, and I'm not worried about Marv, I don't think that was his intent, but I'd hate to see a 3-story building with nothing but efficiency units in it that are extremely small and extremely inexpensive and everything else. So, I'm just wondering if we should look at that square footage.
Yeah, certainly I can do a survey of the cities we had surveyed for the other density and the building requirements. Yeah, we just did not get into that topic.
Are you aware through your planning that you've done so many years that other cities do have higher quantities of square footage, or?
I don't know that. I know we had done this amendment probably 2008 timeframe, roughly. So that's how long we've had that in our ordinance, but it's been a long time since I did that research, so I don't recall what other cities were at the time.
Right.
Is there anything that you can restrict a builder saying that they have to have a mix of?
That's a question I want to run past city attorney to see if there's some,
Yeah. Because
maybe there's some ratio, and that
Yeah.
to Sean's point.
Yeah.
I'd love to see that if we could.
Yeah,
I mean,
definitely.
Yeah.
Good question.
I don't think Marv's in any hurry here.
I just don't want to see certain people getting pushed out of a price point and being able to rent. And efficiency is something that an elderly person would easily move into, easy to take care of, someone first starting out on their own. So, I think it's wise that we try to work toward a mix so that we aren't pricing somebody out.
I'd be fine with a mix too. I guess my worry was that some developer came in and really crammed them in there just for pure profit's sake on his part, but it isn't what's best for the city.
Yep.
Or that little confined area.
Certainly could get that, so that's a
Right,
very good
Yeah.
question.
Right.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But
Okay.
no, a mix is a good idea.
Yes, I certainly
My
do.
question was, if you're gonna have that many teeny little apartments, don't they have to have egress? So that means a window in each one of them little apartments? So pretty much the whole building would be just window.
So obviously, in a multifamily building, you have your fire suppression systems as well. I'd have to talk to the building official further about means of egress. It's really, you're typically not looking to hop out windows necessarily, but get through corridors, get to stairways, get to elevators, that type of thing.
Yeah, if you're on the 3rd story, you probably wouldn't want to hop out.
Fire suppression.
Just by building code, it's required to have building suppression. And I can provide more information on that too, right?
Right.
Okay, so is that the consensus to have Ken check out, is it possible to put different types of units, required unit sizes, or
So
spaces within it?
1, 2
So-
inefficiency or something?
Yeah,
unit sizes, if cities have ratios of unit mix or anything like that, right?
Mhm.
See what I can find out for you. And then
Okay.
I'll get more information, Rick, on the fire extinguisher, or the fire suppression and egress.
That's gonna come up on the tenant one though. So-
Certainly, yep.
So make sure that you do check it out because this question is gonna come at us. I already got that question.
Yep, we've had that question before too, so I don't know what the cutoff is offhand. I know our building official would know that if you were here, but we'll get that for you.
But the thing that's going to be different versus the rental discussion that you're talking about, Rick, is this is going to have fire suppression as part of the building.
Right, and that's my question. If you are going to have like a 3rd floor situation, there's an apartment in there, can we force them to cut that hole in the wall? And I don't think we can.
I'll get you that information. I don't know
Because
specifics.
you know specifically what I'm talking about.
I know for things we've looked at just on the concept of Marv's building that he was looking at, if it's so many feet to a building, even though you have fire suppression, you can only have so many percentage of that wall as window opening, different things like that come into play. Construction type, for example, is another one.
Look into it, and then
I'll get you.
when you're reading through that, find out if it's enforceable by us, or if we'd have to grandfather something like that in. Because that.
For existing built, yeah.
Yeah.
Existing rentals, yep.
All right, good.
Mhm.
Can I add a comment on building design number 3?
Yep.
And I don't have any problem with the statement or anything like that, just commenting on how subjective it seems to be, and how do we enforce compliance with it, and would we have hearing enforcement depending on who our planning person is on that particular day, or
Oh, you're talking number 3, if they look like a front facade?
yeah, contribute to the pleasing scale features seem to be pretty subjective.
Yep, so
Is that a planning and zoning term at college?
no, it is very subjective, and I'll just point out how we've done that for commercial buildings, if you have the same language in there. A lot of times those come through as conditional use permit reviews, but when they're not, what I'm looking for is that if they have a design on the front of a building, that they're not all of a sudden taking away, on something that doesn't face their own, the varying roof types, or they're using less colors on block or brick, or they're taking windows out that they probably should have to make it, save money and those types of things. That's usually what we're looking at. That you could look at every side of that building and go, okay, that could be on the front and meet our code. That's what I'm looking for. Typically, those come through as conditional use permit reviews. This necessarily wouldn't, but yeah.
So this is referring to not the main entrance?
Not the main. That's referring to anytime you have something that's not the main, but it's visible from a public road, and there's pretty much no facade that you can't drive around a property and go, I can see that elevation. And it's usually one that the developers hate to have to meet up with, but no, I don't back.
I'm just worried that there would be a lack of understanding between what you think is pleasing and what I think is pleasing, maybe two different things.
Oh, we get that planning.
Right, I mean, so then we're subject to, the city is subject to some issues if we don't agree.
Yeah.
Like I said, I agree with it, and I understand what I think it means.
I would say
if there's more objectivity to get at to it, it would be better. But
and I think everything from there refers back to number 1. You have to have those items, including brick, wood, stucco, natural, artificial stone, and concrete. I mean, that's what we're looking for ultimately.
Okay. Sounds good.
All right, we'll bring that back.
Awesome. Next.
This one I told you is coming back to, Ken.
Alright, so next item is a variance V2 2020 for a wetland setback for the construction of a new home. This is an application by Mr. Mike Wynot, who is in the audience here tonight. Should you have any questions for him? And this is an item that initially came in front of the Planning Commission at their meeting back on February 26th. Mr. Wynot is requesting to reduce our ordinance required 50-foot setback from that 50-foot point to the edge of the conservation easement, which he put in place during the planning of that property. We'll go over the maps here in a minute. And in this case, that conservation easement is no less than 30 feet. There's some areas it's wider than 30 feet, but we'll go over the details of that when we take a look at the exhibits. And this is to allow for the construction of a home on that lot. We did have a pretty good turnout at the Planning Commission meeting for the request. We had 4 public comments received at the meeting. 3 of the 4 comments stated opposition for the request. The reason for their opposition was due to the applicant's history of upkeep on this property and other properties they referenced, both, I should say not both, but mainly in the county, but also this property in question that we've got here tonight. And their comments were not specific to the variance criteria, I want to point out. The Planning Commission's main concern at the meeting was that they did not have a specific house plan that they were looking for. So some of these requests we get, we have specific house plans. Sometimes we do not have a specific house plan. In the case of this one, I did not specifically require that for the review, because variances are based on conditions of the lot, not of the conditions of the house you're going to put on that lot. So they ultimately, the planning commission did recommend denial, and they based that on the fact that they didn't have a specific house plan in front of them at the meeting. I noted at the meeting that that was not a strong finding for the variance denial, but that is what they put forward to the planning commission tonight, or to the council tonight. Staff continue to recommend approval after conversing with our city attorney on the matter. I do want to point out, and we'll go over these in a minute too, the applicant did submit pictures and a revised footprint for a house that could be constructed in lieu of the other option that was reviewed at the planning commission, which is a split level home. The one we'll look at tonight is actually a duplicate footprint of home located directly to the north of the lot that is existing in the neighborhood, more of a two-story type construction home with a side set garage that provides a wider footprint. Just want to zoom ahead here to some details. So this is the map we looked at the planning commission meeting in February. Give you a few pointers here. So the thicker green edge, this is the delineated wetland edge from when the property was platted. It's a known point on the survey. I just overlaid everything on the air photo for ease of view for everybody. When that plat was done, we also had the conservation easement edge put in place, and I do point out that that conservation easement was put in place at a specific distance made to protect that wetland, and it's based on the criteria of our zoning ordinance amendment for land and water preservation. Our wetland specialist looks at the criteria in the code and determines what that minimum buffer should be. And this ended up being a minimum buffer of 30 feet. For ease of signage and ease of maintaining the buffer, it's essentially a straight line, doesn't follow the contours of the wetland directly, but it is a straight line from this point in the lot where there's a sign to another sign on this side of the lot that are in place on the property. And again, that is meant to be a no-mow area. There is no mowing to occur in that spot. It's to remain in a natural vegetative state. So those are marked, and it is appropriately there, and that is the area that cannot be touched. So this request for the variance is simply to build up to that conservation easement line. Now, the example we looked at the meeting again was just to look at what was a typical house in the area, and that was a split level home with a kind of an average of 50 feet deep, where you have the garage offset to the front, and then your house kind of built off the backside of the split. And it's kind of a generic footprint, but shows you that with the normal 30-foot front setback, and then the 50-foot indicated from the wetland edge by ordinance today. The 50-foot edge is this dashed line here, shows that a considerable portion of just a typical split-level home would be within that 50-foot area, but not within that wetland buffer conservation easement area. And I've pointed this out before, but that conservation easement area, again, is the protection for the wetland. The reason we have the 50 feet is for where we have existing wetlands and ponds and other things, and we don't have a delineation on file. That 50 feet is kind of the default protection for that wetland. In this case, we have the conservation easement that's put in place with the platting, and that provides the protection in the buffer area. And again, not looking to go within that conservation easement area. That is still the protection in place. So I point out that this house example, again, would go beyond the buildable area without a variance, but we've still got that protection in place. Now, I want to go to back up to what Mr. Wennett submitted and wanted to look at tonight was even a different house plan. I think this actually goes to the point that no matter what type of house plan you look to put on this lot, it is not very deep. And again, I think from staff's recommendation is there is a necessity for a variance from the plain reading of the zoning ordinance with that 50-foot setback, because it really should allow the lot to be built to that conservation easement line, because that's what we're trying to protect. This is actually a duplicate of the house located at 900 Lexington Avenue North. Tim Reebok's home directly to the north side of the pond here. That home, to point out, is actually about 30 feet from the edge of that wetland as well. built well before we had any zoning ordinance requirements in place. But taking that footprint and then a deck that they have built off the back of that house, again, you could probably fit the house in with no deck, potentially, or most of it. And then depending where you place it on the lot, the depth gets narrower, wider, depending where you look to put that. But again, it's a very narrow buildable area that we've got in with the existing setbacks today. So this is what Mr. Wynant wanted to show you again. This is a garage off the side, the main body of the home here, and then just to copy the footprint of the Reeboks house, a deck that could go, again, up to the edge of that conservation easement, but not into it. And this is the look of that house, just again to show you that it was more of a elongated design versus the split where you have the garage set in front of the home and then it goes deeper onto the lot. So I would actually argue this would have less of an impact on the distance from the lot, but regardless, there is a very narrow depth to build on in this lot, regardless of what's going to be built. So ultimately, staff does still recommend approval of the variance. I do have a copy of a resolution that supports the planning commission's recommendation in the packet. I also have the recommendation, the resolution following the recommendation from staff and the attorney for your consideration here tonight that would approve that variance with the added condition. This is obviously to try to allay some of the concerns of the appearance and condition of the lot at various times. The condition is that the lot or the site remain free of any nuisance violations before, during, and after construction of the new home. Again, it's just reiterating current ordinances that we have in place. I do want to be very upfront. We did have some violation letters that have gone out on the property since it was platted. They all have been cleaned and taken care of at different times. We do not currently have a violation there today, but I do want to point out that yes, we have gotten calls in the past, and Mr. Ryan has cleaned them up.
And just to remind everybody, this was the property that they went in to excavate before they had gotten any permits or anything, and tore that wetland up a little bit, and they had to fix that. And the neighbors were, from the very beginning, worried that there was going to be mission creep on this. It was when we went to plot it, then we went with the two plots, so there was going to be two properties. But now what's happening is he wants to turn them a little bit like this to make them available, and I ain't good with it. There's a mission creep here. So my
Nope, there's only, I do want to correct you, Rick, there is only one lot to be platted, and that's what was applied for, and that's what we got here today. So I do want to be very clear, there's one lot to build.
That was my question. It's only a
Single lot today.
single lot.
How many homes can go on that other chunk?
Which other chunk?
The other,
Right now, it's only one lot.
It is
It's only one home.
okay.
Potentially, he could come back and replat for more lots. I mean, by the letter of the law, you could probably make 4 lots in total, that would meet the minimum. But again, we only allow the one access that they have. There's a curb cut that was put in when the road was reconstructed. We're only allowing the one curb cut there, so it'd have to be some kind of a shared driveway. Then there's another curb cut off Lexington. So that's all the driveway connections that are allowed on this property. There could be, again, this would come back in front of the Council and Planning Commission, a request in the future to split this up further, but that is not what's in front of you today. It's just one buildable lot.
Do we have, let's just make the assumption that that could be, that they want to put additional houses there. Is that, at that time, would we have any reason to deny that? I mean, based on
We would want to
setbacks?
see grading plans at that point, stormwater plans to make sure that stormwater is adequately addressed and not, degrading the quality of the wetland. And then we'd need to see cross-access easements and shared driveway easement between the properties for upkeep on the maintenance, and obviously the operation and ongoing maintenance of that going forward if there were multiple people using a shared driveway. And we'd also need to make sure that there's fire access to that as well, which obviously there's be, depending on how it's laid out, a turnaround and different things if the road was to dead end at any point. These are things I've talked to Mr. Ryan about previously as well.
Okay.
So I don't know what Mr. Ryan may want to apply for in the future, but at this point we do not have.
Okay. So would that match the density though? If we were to put, make the assumption that there could be 4 houses there with a shared driveway, would that density right there in that spot match the other neighborhood density across the street?
It would, because it would have to meet the same lot size
It
requirements.
would, okay, I just want to make sure that.
No, where they pick up a lot of their extra lot is not so much in buildable area, but lot going out into the wetland area. So they might have a tighter building pad, which obviously that's why we're here with the variance tonight. Let's get back to here. So what would probably happen is you'd see lot lines extend well out into the pond, but they still have to meet a minimum lot width of 70 feet.
Okay.
That doesn't change.
Because the lot does not end at the water's edge.
Right, right. So then, let me ask you, so we got a picture of a house that is similar to what he wants to put up there, and, but there is no assurances that that would have to be the house. I mean, if we approve the lot, that is not, and that there might not be a deck right there on the back of it.
No, and I would not recommend.
Okay, I just want to make sure I wasn't looking at this as
The
the
main
house.
point with Mr. Reinhart's materials is try to obviously show you that there are other types of houses that could fit on here, but regardless, they're going to need a variance. I think that's the key takeaway here.
And they need to meet the same aesthetic value of the surrounding houses.
Well, we don't have a requirement for that.
We don't.
We do not. You can, in any home lot that's available to build on, there's not a minimum aesthetic requirement. We do not have.
You don't have that in any of the residential districts.
I thought it had to match the, I thought at one point it prevented him from moving a house.
Moving the house in requires
Okay.
that. New construction, no, there's not a requirement for that.
Ken, for the council's benefit, could you answer the question that if he wants to try to bring a roadway in to service the lot, he can't put that roadway within the conservation easement, can he?
No, conservation easement, again, is a protection area from that wetland. No mow, no development, basically nothing can occur in that area.
So when you look at the width of that house there on the west end of the lot, and he's trying to bring a roadway in, as he has to stay within that area.
Basically between, in the 30-foot front minimum setbacks for that.
And that would be a private drive, right?
That'd
So
be a
that
private
makes-
drive.
So essentially, we're talking an association similar to maybe one of those other streets over off of 10th,
It'd be similar to Evergreen Avenue.
Evergreen. Yeah, that's what I was
There.
referring to.
Actually very similar to one directly south of Colburn's with the townhomes on it.
Right.
We don't even give it a name, it's just a driveway.
But there's no, he wouldn't necessarily have to have an association where they all.
Oh, we would require that.
Oh, you would,
Yes.
so they would be required to pay that, and then all of them would have to pay for the snow removal.
Yep.
And whatnot.
The only way around that they wouldn't need that shared driveway is if this was only split into two. You've got one driveway right up to this house,
Yep.
and then one over here. That's really the only way to avoid that.
Right.
And maybe that's what Mr. Monette ends up wanting to do, just have two lots there. Those would be very
But then he wouldn't
large
need, he wouldn't need to put it so far over in that corner if he chose.
Nope, he wouldn't, but it actually gets narrower.
If
as you
it's
bring
only
it
two
to the
houses,
middle.
but
Yeah.
I think it,
My key takeaway is it's so not very deep. And we knew this when the lot was getting platted, that there's a need for that. And I think the other key takeaway is we've got the conservation easement in place, and that's why we have that ordinance, rather than just the blanket 50.
right. But if we didn't approve it, it would limit it to maybe only two houses potentially. And with.
That might, because you
with
might
no
have
shared
having wider
driveway-
houses.
With no shared driveway, but just different access.
Yep, they could. I'm not saying you couldn't build any house there, but it would be a practical difficulty to keep it that way, which is the standard for a
Right.
variance.
Well, and I've heard from the neighbors too, I think they'd rather see just a couple houses than 4 houses crammed in a row with a shared driveway than potentially have some of the issues that we had at Evergreen.
Yeah, the neighbors weren't too hot about it when he was doing the project. He put that sign up that said, 2-bedroom homes or something like that. And the sign got moved and knocked down and drove over. And everybody said they didn't want that, they didn't want that. So he said that it was just going to be, at that time, he said it was just going to be, just the 2 little houses is all you're going to put. And you can see this right off of the print. That's not the plan. The plan is to fit 4 on there, and he's going to take it one little variance at a time. So,
Can you clarify for me, the yellow house that's drawn in this diagram
Yep.
is within the building pad, correct?
All except for the garage area here and a portion of the back part of the
So when
house.
you're saying you can't build a house in it, I don't understand what you're saying.
You could potentially fit a house in the slide, it's just gonna be different than other homes in the area. 'Cause
Okay.
it's not gonna have the same footprint, or it's gonna be
Right,
in such a different fashion.
right.
That's the practical difficulty.
Okay,
It
well, I
might
just
look different than the neighborhood.
like to make a few comments, just give my 2 cents in it. I stand in agreement with planning and zoning, maybe not for the same reasons, but I don't see a unique circumstance that applies to the property. The property was platted after the ordinance was enacted. Developing near a wetland is not a unique circumstance. The owner had control and actually platted the property, which avoided a unique circumstance by doing it as a one-lot development and has a large lot size and building pad with it. As a single lot development plat avoided some city reviews, such as stormwater reviews you just mentioned. Therefore, I don't see the owners negatively impacted. It's not a requirement that everyone can build a similar sized house in the neighborhood. And even if there was, there are a number of homes that are smaller footprint than what is projected there in the areas. The Reebok house that you're referring to, or yeah, I think that's a 1,300 square foot footprint, and there's a lot of homes with less than 1,300 in this neighborhood, 900, 1,000.
So a lot of them are splits, so have the garage set to the front. So I think the,
Yeah, you're talking about style and size, I'm talking about the footprint of it, so there's differences there. I think the owner has the ability to provide a buildable area and construct a single-family home on the lot consistent with the type and size of home that's in the area, in the neighborhood, with the full wetland setback in place. I think the variance would change the essential character of the neighborhood, and I define character to include the wetland and the aesthetic quality of not only the homes, type and size, but the wetland character and protection of drainage. As I mentioned, this was not, there was no stormwater review here, so we're talking about drainage being a factor as well. The building, as it's drawn there, is proposed to go very near the 30-foot easement, so that takes well into the 20-foot area between the building, or current ordinance, and the wetland easement. There's many homes in that area that are much further away than 35 feet from the
many are, and the one on the corner is within 30.
right, but there are many that are much further away. And I think the variance would allow for a larger home potentially, and that creates an economic benefit. And economic benefit is not a practical difficulty as far as the definition of our ordinance. I do understand there's variances on new plats, but I think that's really an exception, and they've really done it almost in concert with the new plat. But a variance on something that's just been filed 2 months ago in the county seems to be a little unusual to me. So that's my 2 cents. But I don't think it meets the circumstances of granting a variance.
I agree.
Okay.
So we will need very specific findings. Bruce, I don't know if you want to use your findings.
So,
I didn't write every bit of it down.
Just use the
You're
last part of
welcome.
it.
You're welcome to. I'm not. That's just my interpretation of it.
so what was Scott's take on this?
I'm gonna be a little careful with this. We have approved other variances without specific footprints in the city in recent past. We are still providing for our code minimum protection of that wetland to the point of you shouldn't grant a variance to a brand new development. That's not a real great finding. I know where you're going with that.
I'm not saying that is a finding. I think it's a red flag, though. It's unusual. It's not.
It might be unusual, but it is an existing situation. Regardless of the plat happening now or 20 years ago, it's still a wetland that's in place and it's been there for many years. The conservation easement provides that protection to the wetland, and that's the key point. I guess that's what I'll say, when I'm pointing out the key things here.
That's my finding.
Conversation with them.
You know,
We are still providing the protection, and on the flip side, by not providing the variance, I believe you could be changing the look of the neighborhood by having a different look of a house in there than what you generally see in that neighborhood. Be wider, not as deep. Variances aren't easy.
That's definitely true.
We just need sound findings, whichever direction. That was kind of the key takeaway from this.
You're questioning the 50-foot issue, and there may be something that should be looked at. I mean, if you're...
We have to leave that in place at the 50 feet because we have many wetlands in town that we don't have a delineation on, and obviously don't have the benefit of having the conservation easement established, setting that requirement to look at the type of the wetland, look at the quality that you're trying to maintain in the minimum buffer. So the 50 feet is kind of a default, hey, this is going to cover all situations of variances, whether it needs it or not.
Yeah, it's kind of implied by the way you're talking about it, that that's kind of the default, but it's not written in our ordinance as a default under these circumstances, so we can't...
It is,
as a body,
except in cases of variance.
But we can't as a body just assume that, well, that was really meant just for a default. We shouldn't think about that in this case because our ordinance is our ordinance.
Our ordinance is our ordinance in case of absence of the conservation easement having the specific information and review at a later date.
Then it should say that, but it doesn't.
Hard to put that in there when you do have, obviously in the same section of the ordinance, that buffers are going to be the 50 feet except for when you have the specific, and it's MN RAM assessment done. So it does cover that.
Say that in layman's language.
Well, if you're saying...
Absent the specific review and the specific conservation easement going in place, it's going to be the 50 feet. In these cases where we have the plat done and we have the review and have our wetland engineer look at it and put it in at something less, and it could be 50 feet depending on the quality of the wetland, then that would still apply. But it really depends on, do you have the information? If you don't, you gotta go with the bigger setback.
See, well,
Yeah,
you know,
that's
just to remind everybody that that neighborhood is so beautiful. And one of the things that other neighbors wanted was that anything that is built there be consistent with their properties. You know, so, and then that's why they raised a stone, or a stake. And we went ahead and went beyond, or we turned them down. And then we told him, you're not getting permission. And now he wants to change it again so that he can fit in more pieces. And so it's just going against what we originally validated it for. You see what I'm saying?
Here's my argument. I don't know what we're protecting with the additional 20 feet when we don't have a buffer covering it for any reason. That'll kind of be my final statement on that.
I guess I'll clarify, because if you put a deck on that property, that is creating a different surface. So what
Nothing would ever be allowed within that conservation easement. That's not what the variance is proposing.
maybe I misunderstood what you said then. I thought you said between the 30 and the 50.
Between the 30 and the 50, we don't have any conservation easement on this lot today.
Right.
We don't have anything.
An easement we don't.
Correct.
But our ordinance protects that area.
Only because that's the blanket ordinance absent the specific information.
Well, are you saying the ordinance doesn't apply? We're going back and forth here.
It doesn't apply in cases where we have a request for variance and we have the proof that we did not require additional protection.
So
we
you're
didn't
saying,
require it.
So you're saying a variance is not required?
No, the variance is required because it's the catch-all buffer. That's why we're looking at this in this case. So I think what you're saying, Bruce, you'd like to see the ordinance written in cases where we have a specific wetland conservation easement put in place. That's a setback line. I think that's what I'm saying. say.
That's what I'm hearing you saying.
That's how we do not have it written that way. Okay, that would make more sense and we don't have to come back at variances. And that's where I'm saying I have a hard time seeing a denial on this when we have absolutely no rationale for protection beyond that buffer easement line from a professional standpoint.
But you're saying our ordinance doesn't state that.
It doesn't exclude that at this point, no.
So
That's why we're looking at a variance here tonight.
What's the 10 feet? It's 10 feet from the 30 feet, isn't it? Or 20 feet from the 30 feet, is that how it's defined?
No.
Okay.
There's, absent that conservation easement, let's say this lot wasn't platted, it was a 30-year-old lot. The variance that we'd be looking at was from the 50 feet. We would have no other information to go off of. I would not be recommending that variance because I don't know the quality of that wetland. I don't know what the conservation easement would be recommended at. In this case, we have all that information, all that review's been done. The protection is set at that red line, that basically minimum 30 foot from the wetland. We've got the protection there. We're not looking to vary from that. So I would agree to your point, Bruce, that we probably should have an amendment to that because we're going to have another variance just like this next month. Same thing on a newer plat where we've got a conservation easement in place and they want to build to that instead of the 50 feet. We approved another one very similar to this for what last year on Eastland Avenue, newer home, and they wanted to build to that easement buffer line as well, rather than the full 50 feet because.
So by granting this one, we're setting ourselves up for a reason that we should just grant them other ones coming up.
Well, no, I think what he's.
I would recommend changing the ordinance to just set it at the conservation easement line, and then you would never see these anyway.
I think what
There's no reason for
What
it.
he's saying is we've already granted some already.
We've granted many.
Yes. That's what he's saying, and I think
And I'm
that's.
saying if you want to find in the opposite, we need very specific reasons to find for the denial.
How come we didn't do that already then, if we were pushing it that far, and then, but this never came up?
Well, I think in the past year, we've done,
Yeah.
I think we've had about, well, in the past 2 years, I think we've had 5 of these variance requests, so it's break time. I kept thinking, well, you can't have too many of these pop up, but they keep popping up.
So by doing that though, exactly what the neighbors are screaming about is gonna happen. So we really didn't do anything.
We are protecting the wetland as our ordinance requires, per the specific review criteria based on our wetland engineer's recommendations. I don't think we're not doing any disservice to that wetland, in my opinion. We've got the wetland easement in place, it's not being touched.
The style of the house.
But you're losing the consistency in the properties. I mean, if you go on that whole block, stick it a little one block area around that.
I would argue this would allow a house to be built in a different configuration in the neighborhood to fit within the narrow confines of that.
Agreed, but in my world, if you have a building at 30 feet versus one at 50, it makes a difference. At least that's what the people in Barron County, Wisconsin tell me. So I guess that's how I would respond to
Yep.
that.
And I'm not telling you you can't, but I just want you to be very specific in your findings.
Right, well, water quality, at least my understanding, there's a difference between how close you have the building to the water.
And what I'm telling you is if the courts look at a record, and I don't want to get into this too much, if the courts look at the record, they're going to say your conservation easement is at minimum of 30 feet. What in the world are you doing requiring it to be more than that? That's all I will say publicly about that.
Yeah, and that's a different scope or a different issue than what we're talking about here.
Then what we're talking about here is issuing a variance, which we have done in the past for other properties.
Yep. If
That's
you want to
it in a
deny it, please
nutshell.
be very specific about the situation on the line. I don't necessarily have to agree with that, I'm just wanting to give you my professional opinion.
Right.
But in clarifying, the action isn't in the approval or the consideration of the variance relative to the conservation easement, has nothing to do with the style or type of the home relative to other homes in the neighborhood. Correct?
Correct.
Right.
I'm not sure if I missed something, what are you saying correct for?
The variance isn't saying it's limited to a certain style. I'm just pointing out that you're not limiting it to a certain style, whether the variance is approved or not. We don't have a certain home type that's required in the single-family district. Now, whether the variance is approved or not could lend itself to a more specific house type, but wouldn't limit that necessarily.
How do we get it corrected so we're not in a situation again?
I would-
Hand is forced.
I would recommend changing the ordinance to read that if, in cases where an existing conservation easement is in place and is recorded at the county, that would be the prevailing setback from wetland for a home.
And when can we do that or expect that?
I could do that.
Next meeting?
Well, no, I wouldn't be able to do it for the next meeting, but I'd have to go to planning commission and we have to have a hearing there.
If it's deemed advisable to do that, it's a change in the ordinance, which would take some time.
Right.
Probably about 60 days, roughly, I would bet.
Who's gonna do anything with it in 60 days, were you?
Pardon?
You gonna do anything with it in 60 days?
Frost is out if it's granted. Well, first of all, you're looking at an executive lot there. It's not a first buyer, home buyer lot there. The example that we showed was executive house. All them around executive house. You got the, I mean, it's the best lot in New Prague with Lakeshore, you know. You guys put a beautiful street in front of it with lights, sidewalks. You fixed the water main. During the construction, I put driveways in, spent gobs of money on the conservation easement to determine that site. So if it's not granted, the house will have to be stretched out because the split level doesn't work on that lot because of the soil types, and we're all getting older. So a single level house, it would be 400 square feet, like Mark Deutsch wants to put it, you know. It's 20 feet wide. You know, that's about the working distance you have. You know, it was a diamond in the coal when it was first bought. You know, it was just for one little lot. But
Yeah, and I thought you were gonna put two little houses on it.
it didn't work. When I got closing, I got a print from Tupi, and he showed me, oh, this is a Cracker Jacks that you have to put there. And then the developer of that parcel, as you can tell, I'm a little nervous.
Yeah, right.
Who the heck did I buy that from? The developer.
Topka
Yeah, Top.
and Rancoop.
You know, he said everybody in the area that, hey, it was gonna never be developed. Well, nothing's in writing. He got older. I didn't know he promised everybody it was gonna be a park forever. So it's just, I mean.
You do remember that neighbors across from you there, they were pretty upset about this.
Well, is it jealousy or what is it?
Well,
You
who
know?
knows?
Yeah.
But if we change that now, them other properties, if we were to have you go ahead and change it, we voted that yes, just get him out of there, out of the situation, and then you went into research it for 60 days, and then we changed that, or is there some of these properties that you're talking about gonna come up in between that, just in that 60 days?
I don't know that we would see anybody else. All the other lots are very deep. I think to Bruce's point, they're far enough away that it's really not an issue for them.
No, but I think he's talking about, new lots coming up down. You said you might have one, you know, this and this. I mean, I understand where everyone's going, and changing the ordinance may be fine, but if you change the ordinance, this variance wouldn't be in front of us. So I guess my feeling is to approve the ordinance, or the variance, because what we're talking about changing the ordinance is basically putting it into the easement. If they have the 30 feet easement
And
requirement.
I think that makes sense where you have it established. Where it doesn't make sense is where you don't have that established.
Right. So that's my take on it.
Well, I'd like to make a motion to approve variance V22020.
Okay. I'll make a second on that. Any other comments?
Just a comment, I don't disagree with the ordinance, but I don't think we're well served to try to presume that we have all the information to decide upon an ordinance without having a presentation on it, this information on it. So,
Yeah, I don't think, we're not voting on the discussion of changing the ordinance. We're voting on the variance, but the discussion turned that changing of the ordinance would mean that this lot would need it.
If everyone would approve that.
Right.
Change the ordinance.
Right.
I agree that that's how we would it.
Yeah. So, any other comments? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition?
Opposed?
Okay, passes 3-2.
I'm just looking for clarification regarding it, but I didn't have,
You said aye, right?
I said aye.
Yeah,
Oh,
there's
okay,
3,
all right.
and then 2. Thank you, Mike, for getting that clarified. Okay,
Yep.
2020 citywide cleanup.
So we have some pretty significant changes we're proposing this citywide cleanup here. And even this might have to change with the recent
Right.
events here. And
Yeah, what if you had Corona with somebody in there?
well, we'll go with this for now. We may have to revisit it. Anyway, the main background I wanted to cover with you tonight is the county, Scott County's once again offering cleanup day grants. They have some new staff at the county, and they're looking for more specific information that we can collect on how much of our materials are being recycled. That's the only thing they're going to reimburse on, and we have to have a better way of tracking it. And specifically, going back to last year, and when we talked about the 2019 event, we had concern for a number of years from Rob Hennis at Lakers about the ever-growing piles of debris at the end of people's driveways to do the home-to-home collection, continuing to grow and making it almost financially infeasible going forward. Last year we implemented an 8x8 limitation on 8x8 by 4 foot tall on the pile. That helped, but what that will not help with the new grant criteria is us tracking what is actually being recycled between what is being landfilled. So I've been talking to Rob from Lakers on and off since the last cleanup event, and then when the information came out from Scott County, we had actually met with Nick Rhesus from Environmental Health, who had actually sent the letter on the grant on, okay, what are cities doing to actually provide better tracking? And their recommendation, and this is kind of what Rob was recommending last year, is if we go to a drop-off site for every bit of the items. We'll still take the same items we took before, it's just they'll have dumpster for general refuse, a dumpster for commingled recycling, they'll have a dumpster for recycled plastic, they'll have something we've never done before is actually offer vehicle battery recycling at no charge, because the grant will pay for it because of the increase. They'll collect cardboard, which they do all the time anyway, clean wood, and again, all at no cost. So I think things we're getting out of it this year is specific drop-off for all these items, and then adding the batteries, adding the specific plastics, and then the wood, clean wood recycling, which would be new wood again, no cost. The grant is increased from, we had $1,580 in 2019 to up to $1,844.15 here in 2020. But to go to this event, we had to have a cleanup site, talking with city staff, talking with Lakers about where a site could be to do this. And jump ahead a little quicker here. Trying to look at the city owned property, the old creamery, and obviously with the street project maybe happening, maybe not. We'll find out, hopefully it will be. They wanted to use the gravel area for kind of a staging area. So we're looking at kind of the northern portion. This is just a general schematic Lakers and I had come up with, and Public Works as well, to try to figure out where we could route vehicles in, circulate them through with the collection of dumpsters around there and then out. Paper shredding also would be offered. Once again, we've always done that at City Hall on the south side here. We would not change that at all. But again, really the big one is everything would have to be drop off. Lakers staff would check photo ID and city utility bill to verify residency when things are getting dropped off. This would not take any city staff at all. They would run that process up there. And as in years past too, electronics, appliances, et cetera, would have to be disposed of elsewhere. Scott County Hazardous Waste is a good option for that, and all that information is on the provided brochure. But talking with the county, had them look over the possibility of going to this collection site. They said that's pretty much all the other cities have gone to now. It would be a big change. I don't think we obviously would see the big mad grab for items, because it wouldn't be curbside anymore. That may upset certain people, maybe not others, I don't know. But again, this would not be any impact on the city budget. We still have our line item in there to pay for certain things that get disposed of that we collect at city facilities every year, and then everything else is reimbursed from the county. So really the main thing is the no curbside cleanup, and going to a one-day collection for everybody to bring their items here on a date that's actually later than normal, the first Saturday in June. So I don't have much more to note on that, but this is something that Lakers has been pushing for, and the county is now pushing similarly, so we can actually track tons of all these items being recycled. There's really no better way to do that unless you have a centralized location. And again, they wanted to verify, because we knew we had things getting brought in and just being left on curbs, and this will provide a little better control and accountability for people to bring items in, and we can get better participation numbers as well.
I think I definitely like the having approved by D, and definitely because we do know that people take advantage of it and don't think anything of it. So I like the idea that it has to go to central place and someone has to show a photo ID and a thing and say, yeah, okay, I live in New Prague.
And keep it going forward. And my hope with these changes, and I think the county's hope too, is hopefully to get back, provide more money for recycling electronics and other things, so that we could have vendors that are collecting them at no charge. But we got to get a better handle on that. It's only from the cities and not from miles around here. People can still bring their items to their relatives and they can drop them off. But you only send them to provide that in-person contact.
And I like the fact of the central collection site, just because the city does get a little unsightly when people are piling their things up at the end of their driveway, and then they stay there.
Yeah, and they come to the sidewalks, you're gonna go out into the street, I'm gonna get hit by a car.
That's good. Actually, a really good point, because they do block the sidewalks. And
Yep.
Ken, I think when we talked about this before, there's some part of the fee that residents pay
Yeah.
that's kind of been assigned to this kind of project, the Lakers, but it's kind of been, I don't know what it is, but I guess my question, I think it's a good program. Do we feel that the residents are getting their money worth for whatever amount that we're paying in our bill for this?
Yes, I do believe that, because that monthly base fee on the utility bills goes for the cleanup day, Christmas tree recycling, and I forget, there's another item on there I'm forgetting. On the little handout, Bruce, you've probably seen this more recently than
The
anybody.
collection of the recyclable dumpster, right?
The recyclables, yes, just general recyclables covers that. So, again, this grant just covers city costs, it doesn't cover Lakers' costs to provide this. This is still per our ordinance that we collect this $5.50 per month for them to do that, and they still provide it. It was just getting completely out of hand for their expenses, where they were going to say, we can't offer it anymore.
It just seems like they did a lot more
Yeah.
on this amount of money than they're going to do this year.
Yep. And it's trying to bring those costs down, and their landfilling costs were becoming completely unworkable. And, you know, they're getting pressure from Scott County and the MPCA to landfill us overall too. So that was just going on their total, which, you know, yeah, they're collecting $5.50 as a portion of that cleanup day fee for that, but it wasn't making financial sense anymore.
You mentioned that third item being the recycling bin, but
Yep.
I think that's part of it because not everyone uses bins.
It is not, it is your choice to use it at this point, but they still have to provide the option for it.
But they're paying for whether they use a bin or not.
You are. And that's been the argument, people pay their utility bills, and people say, I don't generate garbage, what am I paying that base fee for? Well, everybody pays that on their account regardless of if they're using it or not. We get that argument from snowbirds, I think, more than anybody, that they're not around for too long.
I guess I'm confused about that, because people get a separate bill for the recycling bin.
Yep, they
In
do.
addition to that.
They do.
In addition to that $5.
They do.
So
Use the bags, and you.
I use the bag, so I'm wondering if I'm.
Yeah, I do too, and I don't pay anything.
There's no,
But people with bins get a separate bill.
no,
No, not on.
Not for the recycling.
not for the recycling,
Not for recycling.
just
I was
for,
told they did.
just for your garbage. No,
Use
Just
a
garbage.
recycling bin?
Yeah, but I use the bags. I use garbage in the bag, and then I have a recycling bin.
Did you get a separate bill? Oh, okay, it's part of your utilities bill.
I only pay what's on the utilities bill. If you use the bag, you don't get a separate bill to have the recycling bin that I wheel down.
yeah, whether you use it or not is your choice, I guess.
Yeah, there's-
Initially, I think they got grants for some of that recycling, but then it became their cost.
Early on, yes, now it is all their cost.
Yeah.
Correct. That's kind of an ongoing issue for all the carriers in Scott County, to keep their costs down with it, while at the same time they're required to collect more recycling. It's a whole thing. But eventually we'll have to get into a garbage collection, Mike's looking forward to a new collection ordinance for refuse, but that's another topic for another.
Yeah, how long are the dumpsters gonna be there?
We just looked at them, put there maybe a day or two ahead of time, fence off the area, Lakers would do that, and then have them out of there by the next Monday. Just so people, they don't want people just coming and filling them up either.
Right, that's.
They would actually probably empty the dumpsters immediately following the event.
Right. That'd be something we'd have to keep, Jim, I think you might want
Yep.
periodically have police go around there, because I can see people saying, oh, good, I got a
They
couch and I'm
do,
gonna.
they do, I see them around 3 and 4 all the time, they swim right through there. Really, what, it's the middle of the morning and nobody out here.
Okay, any other questions? I guess I'll make a motion to approve the
So recommending approval of the agreement, I didn't even touch on the agreement, but the agreement is
recycling program.
very similar to the agreement that we've had with them for the past
Yep.
15 years.
Do you need a motion on that? or-
I made a motion already to approve the agreement.
Did you get the
Recycling
second?
agreement. Not yet.
You got it.
Okay, I got a second by Rick Seiler. Is there any other questions or comments on it? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Okay, that's 5-0. The next item was table, so now we're into 9A, which, Mike, I assume you're going to kind of shed the light on, and Jim, and regarding,
You want to go right into it, or do you want to take a bit of a break before we go into all those?
you need a break, Rick?
Yeah, it's only 20 after 8. We could be here till 9:30, 10. I better.
No, we're not gonna hear.
No, you go ahead, we're gonna take a couple minute break.
10 minutes.
We are at agenda item 9A, which basically is dealing with our pandemic situation going on with the coronavirus. So, Mike, I'm gonna turn it over to you and Jim.
We've got 3 items, and I'm gonna ask Chief Grice to come up. He also happens to be our emergency preparedness manager, and so a lot of what we're trying to develop and put together is with his leadership. So we're going to walk you through some things tonight that we didn't finally get from the city attorney until about 5:15. And so with this whole COVID-19 or the coronavirus stuff that's going on, and I'm not sure what we missed at 5 o'clock with some of the news that I didn't get a chance to hear any of that, but I know it's fluid and changing from what we started the day with to I think what we've heard at the end here, and so I'm going to let Jim talk a little bit about that. But then we're going to walk you through the 3 different action items that we have about the mayor declaring a statement and a determination regarding conducting meetings either by telephone or electronic means for council and other city boards and commissions to try to eliminate bringing people together in this period of time that they don't want us meeting or bringing people together. Then following that is the mayoral declaration that is declaring that a local emergency, that we're trying to invoke that, or it will invoke any and all emergency operations management plans and pandemic response plans of the city, which is under Jim's authority and control, and albeit that that's for a relatively short period of time. Then the last piece is a resolution that would be enacted by the council that extends the mayor's declared local emergency for a longer period of time. So I'm going to let Jim start to walk you through the materials. I know it's a lot to get at the end. We've been following and watching and getting information from the LeSueur County Health Department, the Scott County Health Department, the Minnesota Department of Health, the League of Minnesota Cities, the City Attorney's Office. I don't know how many other cities and other entities, but this has been quite an interesting walk down the road into a new topic that's kind of new to all of us, and I'll let Jim start the discussion.
Yeah, so tonight, the council action that is necessary is to put these 3 documents in place so that we may look at mitigating some of the strategies for communities with local COVID-19 transmissions. Currently, we do not have any cases noted in our city, actually in Scott County or LeSueur County at this time. But the idea is that we put these in place so that we can start addressing it. And that was one of the handouts that I gave you, was just the coronavirus outbreak response plan that I was putting together for the city as emergency management director. Once these 3 actions are taken tonight with the proclamation and the resolution, that gives us the authority to work on these different steps to mitigate some of this. All the way from just setting up different policies and procedures for employees and how we're going to clean City Hall and make sure we address social distancing here at work, to maybe limiting public access to our buildings to help mitigate some of that transfer possibility then. So it is called kind of all-encompassing on the different things that we do, and I think the latest from the CDC is the recommendation that any meetings over 50 are canceled, and down to 10 people with certain populations. If they're doing at a rest home, Monstrana type setting, to limit gatherings of 10 or less in those types of populations, to stagger meals, to keep the numbers lower that you're actually interacting with. We had a meeting today, a supervisory meeting, coming up and going through this response plan. So it may entail addressing some of our employee handbook policies right now, or possibly tweaking some of those to address the concerns for safety and to mitigate that contagion for other employees, along with policies about if they are feeling ill. Obviously, we don't want them working, exposing other employees to that, and to the point where we may be managing our workforce with different hours or different shifts to make sure we have a healthy workforce to deliver services that are necessary. So that's the process that we are working on. Even though the state and the Fed put that emergency notification out there already, I felt it was important that we do it as a city, just to be able to have that authority locally, to again control our city buildings. For social distancing, I don't see a need to control our recreational areas, our parks and things outside, but we may look at not allowing groups to rent out the shelters to have a larger group there right now. That we would indicate that we're not going to do that. If you're going to bring somebody into a space that they cannot exercise that social distancing, then we wouldn't allow that. Mitigating public coming into City Hall to meet at different facilities, that would be something we probably want to do here in the next several weeks, and then address it a little later on. In our discussion as with the supervisors, I would look at doing this through April 20th, even though when we talked to Scott, he didn't put a hard date on the documents here, but by our April 20th meeting, we would reassess. We would inform you where we're at with our plan and what we are seeing in our community, and determine if we're going to continue with a state of emergency at that time. Any questions at all?
Do you feel you need any, or benefit from any flexibility in the sick leave? I mean, people are going to go negative for some reason. Do you feel you have enough discretion to allow exceptions to our policy, so as not, people aren't making the decision, oh, I'm not going to go home because I'm going to go negative or something?
Yeah, I think that's part of it, that our handbook right now says you cannot go negative in any of yours. That would be why I put that in there as a variant to our policy, that no, we would allow that if necessary on a case-by-case basis. In our meeting, we did talk about going up to 14 days, because if somebody happens to get exposed to a relative or somebody that was traveling, and now all of a sudden they're in quarantine for 14 days, that's probably going to happen to keep all the other employees safe. If they happen to be out of time, we would want to allow that to happen for them, believing that they would make up that time later on.
Right, and I'm even wondering if we should talk about some type of allowing more flexibility even to pay, so they don't.
Well, you know,
it doesn't have to be
they said they were going to take and the government grants all this money. Why can't some of that money? Why can't we get any of that money? I'm serious. And we pay the police to take off because we don't want them there when they're sick.
Yeah, I think part of that is putting this in place. As emergency director, I will be documenting all time spent on the planning and organizing and any work with COVID-19 that we are doing for mitigation, so that I can document those costs to the city, that if there is any reimbursement available, that may happen later. Right now, I don't know what's going to be available or if anything is going to be available, but that would be the reason we would document everything. Even, I think, down to employees that would burn time, or that we may be creative with our policies to make sure that we're taking care of our employees and maintaining our workforce at the same time.
Any other comments?
Do you feel you're completed phase one?
Working through it. Yep. We have some employee education to do tomorrow also. I know I will be putting out an email talking about how we are responding to calls. Certain calls we are going to be handling different. We will try and mitigate any face-to-face contact that we can handle over the phone. We'll respond to medicals that are life-threatening, heart attack, stroke, those that need to be. And in-call process, or in-process calls that we need to respond to, but taking a report or something could be handled over the phone, so we will mitigate some of that contact.
What about the equipment you're gonna need to, if we do get that infected here, aren't you gonna need some equipment to be able to go in the houses and stuff like that?
Universal precautions right now. I don't know that I would gown anybody because they need to have access to their utility belt. Yeah, we have gloves. We have the N95 masks available to us. Right now, we have plenty of supplies for our department to do that. We are looking at additional supplies for the city, just for cleaning wipes and different things. Or we'll be mixing up our own cleaning solutions and utilizing rags or shop towels, disposable towels and things.
Jim, are you also coordinating with the fire department?
Yeah, I've been talking with Jeremy and responses. I will continue to reach out to those. I gave Kirby a card tonight to have him give me a call. I know Mayo has their tent up for their drive-up testing. I believe in the next couple of days they're gonna put that into action, where those will be a phone screening first, and then people will be directed to come to that location to provide a sample then.
Where is that tent?
Over by the Mayo Clinic on 37.
Okay.
Oh,
by their clinic office there.
Yeah, it's right off the southwest back side of it. You drive under that awning, then you'll drive into it, and then exit to the north and back out of the driveway. That's their plan right now. They have one in Rochester, one or two in Mankato, and one here. Rochester's has been up over a week, I believe. They have a few more numbers. Mankato had just very light numbers so far. But I'm talking with Mayo just to keep abreast of that. They were concerned about some traffic issues there, but ultimately, people should not just be driving up there. And I talked to them about their employees, their need that, hey, if traffic becomes a concern, I would believe you guys would mitigate that by being out there and only allowing those that were asked to come there to be actually entering into the parking lot rather than getting it all clogged up with people that need or want to just come. But my understanding is they will be directing other people that have a call, and if they say they want to be tested or something, they're going to be directing them to the ER or to go and get seen, not to that location.
Okay. So you're talking about April 20th, is that our second council meeting in April?
Yeah. It's like 35 days out.
So will you be meeting with the emergency people, obviously Scott County and that
Yep.
stuff beforehand?
Yeah,
To kind of keep
Yeah,
us
I've been-
abreast of what's going on at that meeting?
yeah, absolutely. I've been in touch with both of them the last couple of days over the weekend. Getting some flyers from Ann that was sending up just door hangers and different things that we could utilize if we need to. So yeah, working with them.
Okay.
We don't profess as we sit here tonight to tell you that we've got everything all buttoned up the way that we like to. We're going to have to be concentrating on this for the next couple of days to be able to do this. And as this continues to grow in the process here, the intent here is to try to attack this as quickly as we can, trying to limit the exposure and the interaction in bringing groups of people together or having different meetings and that. As of this weekend, the fitness and aquatics facility was closed as of today, based on the school taking a look at their operations. And I tried to alert Maggie yesterday, and I called the mayor just to let them know that the school was making that choice since it's their operation, even though we're in a partnership with them, that it was still the accumulation of the number of people's or individuals in excess of what they wanted to have all in one place and in one location. And if they were closing the schools, I think they could anticipate what that was likely to do. Had discussions specifically with the fire department looking at their event on April 4th, fireman's dance, likely will be canceled or postponed here for April 4th. Chamber talked with them today that they have canceled bingo for the next 2 Thursdays at the golf course. We're trying to take a look at under this action, with the mayor's statement and determination on this is that we would try to go away from bringing people into a large gathering like this tonight and going to trying to conduct meetings by telephone or other electronic means for all of the boards and commissions, at least in the course of the next month. Or the next 35 days, I think is what Jim is recommending in there. Part of our consideration is whether we think we need to effectively close City Hall and figure out how to do business differently with the public, from utility billing or planning and zoning or other facets that, we're thin at depth in certain positions in there, and that, we don't need to get the whole crew exposed to something and then not be able to deliver services, going forward. And so, in what we heard from Jim and in the conversation is that how do we protect on in these early weeks here, trying to determine how long is this going to last or continue. And in the conversation with the city attorney, he was on the phone all day with cities, and that talked to some in the neighborhood. Jordan up the road, they've closed their city hall and operations for at least the next 2 weeks. Elko is seemingly staying open. Shakopee has it this afternoon. They had closed some city facilities, but we're going to be open. Burnsville closed their city hall effective today already. So it's varying amongst each organization and city and trying to determine how they're going to best approach this.
When you say close their city hall, do you mean not allowing it open to the public?
Correct.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm sorry. The employees are still there working and trying to take care of this and find ways that we can still communicate with the public to find a way that either by telephone, by email, or what, how can we continue to still carry out city services and how can we stay interactive, but just avoid that one-on-one exposure in that sense. And so there's kind of a lot in here, and so the first action is that mayor's declaration to try to at least maneuver public meetings, and that will, thank goodness we've got 3 weeks before our next one, so we've got time from the council standpoint. And then moving into the second document is kind of the mayoral declaration, which is a very short-lived, Jim, what was think it was 1 to 3 days or something
Yeah,
like that.
3 days.
Is that it's a temporary declaration that the local emergency, or he's declaring a local emergency to invoke any and all emergency operations and management plans and pandemic response plans put together by Jim as the emergency management director, working with city staff and recognizing that we're probably going to need more time than that, that the council's action, the last one by resolution, actually extends the mayor declared local emergency, and it doesn't set a sunset provision, but that's where in discussions that can be revoked ultimately at some point down the road, but it gives us the abilities to take a look at where we at in about 35 days, and have things gotten a whole lot better and we can relax some of this, or has it gotten worse and we're going to need to keep it in force going forward. So we don't have answers to all of that. And, the hard part of this whole process is trying to obviously minimize that impact. And I think, Mayor, you said you heard or were watching the news that there's going to be a piece affecting
Bars and restaurants.
Yeah, that's what
Governor Walz
Governor
stated
was
on
talking about.
5:30, he did a press conference.
Just as
I don't know all the particulars, that's what I was wondering.
Tomorrow at 5 PM, he's ordered them to be closed.
Right. My question to you, Jim, and then I don't know if you have answers, what about the golf course?
I think that was listed, country clubs was part of the, I thought I heard on the.
Was it, yeah, again, I mean, if you could,
In gyms, or, you know, I mean, workout.
well, yeah, I heard fitness
Bringing
centers.
everybody
and
together. Yeah, we had that discussion in our supervisors meeting too, that, and I'll look into it, but again, as a recreational facility, if you're metering people coming in and you're limiting numbers and then they go out and once it's open and they go out and golf, I don't know that that would be a concern, but is it an essential service for the city to provide at this time? Possibly not, so we can look into that. Do they have a anticipated start date or nothing right now?
No, nothing right now, but
Okay.
I would guess if the, weather has, if it gets a little warm, there isn't a lot of snow out there.
Yeah.
And the golf board is obviously, because of the last year, are pushing, Jeff, as soon as we can get that course open. Now, Creek's Bend did have 9 holes open.
Oh.
They're back 9. Oak Marsh and Stillwater opened this weekend. So courses are starting to open now. The city courses didn't have as much snow, so obviously they can get people out there earlier, but
But if they're closing the bars, and depending on what the definition of that's included in there, is that should affect all of us the same. There shouldn't be any difference that we should be closed and somebody else.
no, I agree to that point. But to Jim's point,
Yeah.
if you have someone could walk up to a window and pay, and, it's like a drive-through, pay your fee, and then go play golf, now you're, especially if you play with me, you're socially distanced because I'll be in the woods a lot and you'll probably be in the fairway. But, that's what I'm saying. It's kind of like the park situation.
Mhm.
You're not going to sit there and say, a couple kids playing in the park, oh, you can't be here.
Right, yeah.
Type of thing because they're in open space. That's my only question. So if you can get some clarity on that, we do have a golf board meeting next Tuesday.
Okay.
So if I could at least get some kind of answer, because I'm sure they're going to ask that at the meeting, even if it's via telephone, I'm sure those questions are going to be asked.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely, I can do that. I'll look into that. And it's not like I'm not going to see you for the next 35 days and we're not going to talk. I'll do email updates or whatever I come up with, I will let you know and pass that information on.
And I'll do the same. I know I've been getting a lot of texts from other Scott County mayors on what they're doing and what some of the stuff being closed and things like that. So I'll try to pass on information to you also.
Okay, perfect.
For that.
It's kind of moving us into uncharted waters that we've not been in before, and, part of our discussion is that how can we do a good job up front to try to eliminate or reduce or minimize any of the exposures regarding congregation of people at events and activities or at locations. As you mentioned, golf course, Rotary's already determined that we won't be meeting for the rest of the month at the golf course. And so, most of the uses and, trying to rent it out for other bigger meetings or whatnot, but right now that's not in the cards. And it could end up, depending on what the interpretation is with the liquor license stuff, similar to the bars and that, we may be out of business from that standpoint, but how can we, like you say, get set up and be able
But
to...
if, like I said, if someone drives through and wants a six-pack on their car, we have the capability of almost like a drive-through, because there's a window right outside of the pro shop, that it could be handled, because I've noticed that he was stating restaurants still can serve food via drive-through.
Yeah.
They're not shutting off their services, but, if that's something that can be, done at a golf course, we can probably do that, where people can pay at a window and go and play, or if they want a pop and a candy bar, they can get that at the window. They don't have to actually physically go into the facility.
But part of taking all these actions is hopefully this is giving us, in the conveyance of the message to the public, is you're authorizing us to take actions that in some cases are maybe going to be viewed somewhat unpopular in nature. And all I can say is we try to take a look at that, is we will be very judicious in trying to do that, but we're trying to make sure that the employees are safe and the public is safe on any of those activities or events associated with interacting in this process.
And I think the public
I think
and the whole
public should
understands
be
what's
able to
going
do
on, so.
it. This isn't like it's a,
So then what do you need me to do? I mean, do I say I'm gonna make this statement of determination, and I'm also gonna make this,
I hereby declare.
make this declaration of 2020-1?
Yeah, take them one at a time.
Okay. The first one here,
Meetings?
yes. I'm gonna, I guess, make the statement of determination regarding conducting meetings by telephone and electronic means. So I do declare that that's what I propose, and I don't think there's any action that's taken on that.
No,
right?
you have the ability to declare that and to put that into place, that essentially if you go down to the findings after recognizing basically everything in A through E, that the statutes provided based on what the governor has said, based on what the World Health Organization has said, and the Minnesota Department of Health, is your findings is what you're saying. Until further notice, all meetings of the city bodies governed by Chapter 13D, including but not limited to council and all boards and commissions, shall be conducted by telephone or other electronic means, because it is not practical or prudent to hold those meetings in person or by interactive television. It has to comply with Chapter 13D-021, and that you can revoke this at any time down the road. But as of right now, you're putting that into play. Our intent would be to see how this works up till April 20th and be giving you some input on April 20th, whether this should continue or stay as is right now. That means we're going to have to look at some things, because we haven't done a whole lot of this, to make sure that we can figure out how we're able to obviously to do this and to get minutes recorded somehow, so that we've got a factual undertaking of what, if any, discussion takes place and or what actions are occurring.
Okay, so I'm gonna make that declaration that Mike so eloquently stated for me.
The second one is...
Okay, I just asked a question on this one. It says the timing method of providing notice is governed by, is there a change in the notice or publishing? Could we call a meeting in a day's time, or do we still need to give a week's notice?
No, I still have to give the normal notice.
So if we had an emergency, something that we need to take action on, we still would need to take a week's publishing? Or what is the time frame? I shouldn't say that.
After an emergency.
Emergencies are different, yeah.
I was just going to answer that if we had to have an emergency meeting, and in most cases, I can't say that I personally had one, so I've not had to do that specifically about doing that. Normally where they occur is where you have some type of weather-related event where you've got a contract for services or other things, and you can't wait for the normal 3-day or 72-hour notice. So what that might mean in this case, I'm not coming up with a quick enough or good enough example that I can give you right offhand on what that would be, but our normal notice for regular meetings is 3 days or 72 hours notice. In the case if it was an emergency, I think we still have to make an effort to notify the news media to post it, but it can be on less than that notice.
Okay, I can look that up too.
But I haven't had an occasion to give you an example to see how it might come into play. But yes, emergency can be less than the normal 3-day
Well,
notice.
obviously not to be dramatic here, but if you are gone tomorrow because you contracted it, then we need to make sure there's an orderly flow of.
Yeah, if you want to
things
appoint
that
somebody
happen.
who would stand in as an interim or something
So we
like
would
that.
need to do that.
Okay?
Emergency, yeah. You look it up, because I think in an emergency, can't you even do phone calling?
I don't know.
Without a notice.
I think so. I think that if he's got an emergency and he needs a quorum, he can make a phone calling of the council.
I'm not going to try to tell you that I know those answers because I haven't had to deal with that specifically. So I'm going to go have to do my homework and take a look at when that can occur, how that can occur, so that I'm ready to be able to do that should the need arise. I can't say that I've done it here in any time in the past, so I can't give you an example to that effect.
It's just nice that we're looking this stuff up, because like you said, tomorrow morning, you might be out of the picture.
Well, it is his birthday, I mean.
Is it?
Yeah. Don't worry, I got a big post-it here. We're gonna go to City Club after this.
Jeez, right. That's
We're
the response plan?
That's the emergency response plan.
You need a time here, it says on March 16th, effective at.
Not for the first one.
Yeah. that's the first one. Or the declaration.
No, the declaration is separate from the.
No, that was electronic meeting. Now it's
It's
the
the next one.
declaration. The second one I have to come up with time. So, whereas the mayor of the city of New Prague, Minnesota, finds the following local emergency exists in the city of New Prague, Minnesota. On March 11, 2020, the World Health Organization determined that the COVID-19 outbreak constitutes a pandemic. On March 13, 2020, President Trump declared a national state of emergency as a result of the pandemic. On March 13, 2020, Governor Tim Walz issued Emergency Executive Order 20-01, declaring a state of peacetime emergency to address the COVID-19 pandemic in Minnesota. The governor's executive order, along with this declaration, triggers activation of the city's emergency management plan and enables the city to exercise its emergency powers. The spread of the COVID-19 in the United States and in Minnesota has raised serious public health concerns and resulted in a great deal of uncertainty. Much remains unknown about the virus and how it spreads. Whereas Minnesota statute section 12-29 authorizes the mayor to declare the existence of the emergency, to invoke any necessary portions of any emergency operations and management plans and pandemic response plans, and to authorize aid and services in accordance with interjurisdictional agreements. And whereas Minnesota statute section 1237 authorizes the city, acting through its governing body, to 1, enter into contracts and incur obligations necessary to combat the disaster by protecting the health and safety of persons and property and providing emergency assistance to the victims of the disaster, and 2, exercise the powers vested in by that section in light of the disaster without compliance with time-consuming procedures and formalities otherwise prescribed by law. And whereas the mayor finds the emergency is sudden and could not have been anticipated, and whereas the mayor finds that this situation threatens the health, safety, and welfare of the residents of the community and threatens the provision and delivery of city services as a result of the emergency. And whereas the mayor finds the emergency poses a risk of and may cause catastrophic loss of public health, safety, and welfare if not immediately addressed. Now therefore, as mayor of the city of New Prague, Minnesota, I declare that the local emergency exist effective at 8 p.m. or 9 p.m. on March 16, 2020 in the city of New Prague, Minnesota. This declaration of a local emergency will invoke any and all emergency operations management plans and pandemic responses plans of the city. The portions that are necessary for response to and recovery from the emergency are authorized, including but not limited to all the appropriate community containment and mitigation strategies. To the extent normal state laws and city policies and procedures impede an efficient response or compliance with federal and state directives and recommendation, the city administrator, emergency manager, and their designees are authorized to suspend compliance with those laws, policies, and procedures and take those actions necessary to protect the public safety and welfare. Dated March 16, 2020 at 9 p.m. by Charles L. Nicolai, Mayor of the City of New Prague.
Are you done?
I'm done.
Mike, is the emergency manager actually designated in any legal documents of the city?
Yeah.
Have we approved that position?
Yeah, we approved Jim as ours.
Is that in our annual?
Yes, our annual thing that Jim has approved as our emergency. So after those two declarations, now we...
This would normally be good for about 3 days.
Right. Because I'm not that important. But now the council needs to approve the resolution, which then will expand the time frame, Mike, basically.
Yep, it agrees with the mayor's determination and finds that the local emergency will last for more than 3 days. And there is no end date underneath this, so it can continue indefinitely until we take an action to revoke it or to stop it.
I just have a quick question on the resolution. Number 3, it says the mayor and city administrator are authorized to execute any agreements and make any corrective action. I'm fine with that, but I'd just like to be informed too if you guys make...
I can assure you that we will be doing our very best, that
Okay.
we're not out doing things, that we're not letting the rest of the council know
Okay.
what's transpiring and what's happening.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
And that is reading that you both have to be execute the agreement?
Yeah, we can't enter in any agreements, either one of us individually, it has to be jointly.
Did you just say they both got to be executed?
That's later on in there. So any other questions on the resolution?
No.
Nope.
I guess I'll look for a motion.
I'll move the motion.
I'll second.
We got a motion by Sean Ryan and second by Maggie Bass to approve the resolution regarding the mayor declared local emergency. If there's no other comments, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Okay, passes 5-0. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. I'm sure we'll be hearing a lot from you guys in the next few days.
Yes.
Motion to adjourn?
Consent agenda.
Oh, that's right, we didn't do that yet.
Consent agenda. Does anyone have any questions, comments, issues on any of the payables, minutes that are in the consent
I
agenda?
think I had one very quick question. Payables. There was a payment to the city of Montgomery, a septic dumping fee.
This is on the
Wastewater, yeah.
From the biosolids fire. So we're hauling sludge to Montgomery, and we're paying them to treat it till we get that
Oh.
building back up and
Okay,
running.
gotcha.
And they're just paying us, we're paying a basically
That's what
cost.
That's exactly
I forgot about
right.
that.
We've done it for them, we did it for Northfield some time ago. It's just an unwritten rule that you're not gonna make any money on it, it's you're gonna charge what it costs you to do it.
Okay, good, thanks. I completely forgot about that.
I just have a quick question for, in the meeting minutes for the EDA. This Project Auto Boneyard of 80 acres of Mox's property, what, I didn't hear anything on that. I mean, I heard that it's not going on now from one of the owners of Mox property, but I didn't know what was,
Well, that's not in the consent agenda. Wait till the miscellaneous.
No, this is in the meeting's minutes, which we were approving.
No, we're not approving that. No, the consent agenda, those are just,
Okay.
yeah, we can talk about the miscellaneous.
Okay.
But anything else in the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, I got a motion by Sean Ryan, second by Maggie Bass. To approve the consent agenda. There's no other comments. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposition? Okay, now we'll go to miscellaneous. Mitch, how you doing? You're doing well. Patrick?
I'm good.
Okay. James, anything else?
Nothing at this time.
Okay, Bruce?
I'm good.
Glenn?
Got nothing.
Nice seeing you again. Ken?
Well, I'll address Sean's question about the 80-acre auto wrecking yard. So I did have a meeting with
It was a wrecking yard or a?
well, is it auto recycling, but they didn't actually do any recycling there. You'd basically have wrecked cars that would have showed up, be parked there for a few weeks, get inventoried. They would put them up for sale on an online site. People would buy them, they'd come pick them up. But it would have been 80 acres of that. And my indication to them was we'd have to annex, and that's discretionary in the council to annex for this type of thing. And oh, by the way, even if that happened, it would be a conditional use to have that happening. You'd have to have massive screening and other environmental protections and environmental review. And I never heard from him after that.
And rezoning, wasn't it?
Rezoning too, yeah.
So we weren't in a situation that it was zoned properly, that we might have had to accept that or anything. That was my
Nope.
concern.
They thought they were something like, this is the greatest thing ever. No.
They had been everywhere else in Scott County.
Yeah.
Oh, they had.
Oh, yeah, they're well known in Scott.
Good.
Anything else, Ken?
Nope.
Michael?
3 items in your packet. One is from Gary Carlson out of League Resources, what the final actions were on 2020 property tax levies for cities, counties, and schools. If you saw that, and you know where we ended up.
Mm-hmm.
The second piece was the issuer comment letter from Moody's on their annual update and taking a look at our financial credit overview. Highlight is that they acknowledged that our credit position is strong and that we maintained our AA3 rating and it's level with the median rating of other AA3 cities across the U.S. And then from the staff that were involved with the presidential nomination election, you can see the results from Scott and Seward County. So.
Okay. That's it? Barb?
I do not.
Maggie?
Nothing.
Sean? No. Rick?
Nope.
Bruce?
Just to piggyback some comments on Mike had mentioned the Moody's Investor Service. I thought that was a very good report for the city, and it points out a lot of the good things that have happened in capital management as well. It does speak to or touch upon cities will generally benefit from an expanding state economy, and I think that we just should have it in mind to consider and think about the budget going forward, what this all means, the current environment. There's been a lot of wide-ranging effects to the city as far as being able to issue a bond in the future, or just because of the way the investments may be working. But also that we already know that the fitness center's closed, we know the golf course might not. So there's a lot of things that might be affecting our budget, and it may be good to revisit the budget mid-year or later in the year, and keep thinking about ways to look at our expenses and just keep a watchful eye on things.
Okay, very good. Anything else? Is that all you have, Bruce? Yep. Okay. The only thing I have, Glenn, is, I know you haven't been here for a while, so I thought I could, you know, at one time, we talked about the compost center, or the thing, and some options. I just want to make sure we keep going forward on that, you know, if it's video cameras or whatever.
I unfortunately have not spent much time at it, and I apologize for that, but it kind of got put on the back burner with everything else happening.
No, that's fine, and
But you're
I'm
right,
expecting,
It's been closed
you know,
anyway, right, because of the flood?
Yeah,
It's something we talked at the Sewer County meetings a couple meetings ago that we had the gentleman, I can't think of his name,
Recycling guy, really.
yeah, from Tri-County Recycling, you know, and he was talking about that some other cities are using video cameras and, or even the gate type deal for their compost centers, because they obviously have the same issues.
same issues, yeah.
We have.
Yep, no, we'll not get forgotten about, but
No,
I haven't-
I won't let you forget about it.
Thank you.
Don't worry
No.
about it.
I just haven't spent any time on it.
No, and it's not a high priority thing. Final thing is I want to wish Mike happy birthday,
Happy birthday,
Happy
Mike.
Birthday, Mike.
you know, and if anyone wants to come down to City Club after the meeting, I will buy. So maybe that shouldn't be on camera, but.
Maybe you should lift me up in there.
You did have drive up, sir. No, you could be in there till the 5 tomorrow afternoon, so we got plenty of time. So I don't have anything else. I guess I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
So if there's nothing else, all in favor of adjournment, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Okay, we're out of here. Thank you, everyone.